Chen-gu was thankful that he didn't say anything bad about Zhang earlier. He laughed awkwardly and said, "I came out for fresh air because the dance studio was a bit too stuffy." The red blood trailed down her uniform as Zhang stared at Chen-gu. Then she raised her slender, pale arm to point at the building that Chen-gu knew as the teacher's lounge. "You want me to go there?" Before Chen-gu could get an answer, Zhang disappeared. Chen-gu was several meters away from the gate, so he was caught in a conundrum. If he returned to the school to investigate, he might run into more danger, but if he just left like that, he would feel so unsatisfied. Zhang attitude toward me seems to have softened. Her hint should be related to the case 4 years ago. However, this school seems to have another presence similar to Zhang, and there is more than one. I should probably wait for the police to arrive first before I go back in. After jumping out of the school, Chen-gu stood on guard outside the gate. He wasn't sure whether Zhang Peng was still alive or not, so he did not dare let his guard down. 15 minutes later, the blinding headlights of a car cut through the darkness. 2 police cars were heading his way. Chen-gu jumped out into the road and waved the flashlight on his phone. "I'm here." The cars stopped at the gate to Western Zhejiang's private academy, and Inspector Li, as well as an officer Chen-gu hadn't seen before, stepped out from the car. "Uncle Li, you're so fast." According to Chen Ji's calculations, the police should have required another half an hour before to get there. "We received a distress call from a taxi driver earlier, saying he was getting robbed, so we were already on the way to this place." Inspector Li had heavy circles under his eyes, signs that he had overworked himself for the past few days. "Is that so? In any case, come in quick, Zhang Peng should be still inside the school." Chen-gu pointed at the abandoned school's gate. One might have thought he was the host inviting the guests into his house. "De Yong," Inspector Li said, and a muscular police officer who was about 1.9 meters tall pulled out a clipper from the car's trunk. "After entering the school compound, we'll need to be very careful. The suspect is very cunning, so stick together in pairs." He turned to look at Chen-gu. "Where is the last place you saw the suspect?" "At the dance studio, but he has run away already." "In any case, I have something else to report to you." Chen-gu walked to Inspector Li's side and pointed at the teacher's lounge. "Inspector Li, do you mind following me? De Yong, you stay behind to watch over the road, others move out according to plan." Inspector Li issued his orders, and then he followed Chen-gu into the teacher's lounge. This building only had 3 floors, but the interior decor was much more high-class than the other buildings Chen-gu had been in. Inspector Li held the flashlight in his hand and asked, "Why are we here? Did you see the suspect run this way?" His gaze was sharp, and the tiredness fell from the man. Once he entered the crime scene, Inspector Li seemed to morph into another person. "Zhang Peng won't have come here." Chen-gu walked ahead, trying to pinpoint the exact room Zhang Ye's finger had pointed at. "I'm bringing you to the place that's related to the death of the girl 4 years ago. Haven't I said I will help you investigate that after we capture Zhang Peng? The 2 cases cannot be mixed together, and the most important thing now is to capture Zhang Peng. We're here, this is the room." Chen-gu didn't answer Inspector Li. He had waited for the police to come because he wanted to lower the risk to its bare minimum. The sign on the door said that this was the storeroom for gym equipment. After pulling off the seals and kicking the door open, Chen-gu and Inspector Li walked into the room. Numerous balls littered the room, and exercise equipment like tennis rackets and ping-pong paddles hung from the walls. "You brought me here to see this?" Inspector Li used his flashlight to scan the corners of the room. "What can it prove?" "Gym equipment." Chen-gu walked to the center of the room and started ransacking the place. He stopped when he reached a single bed that was placed next to the innermost cupboard. There was also such a bed inside the dance studio. It looked specially made because the bed frame was slender than most normal bed frames. Why is there a need for a bed inside the storeroom? Chen-gu frowned with confusion before lifting up the bed's wooden boards. A harrowing scene revealed itself before their eyes. Underneath the worn and dusty bed frame hid 10 female ballet shoes of differing sizes, and a pair of them had been dyed black by blood. That many of them? Looking at the shoes that appeared to have been purposely hidden underneath the bed, Chen Gu did not feel anger but shock that the incident at Western Zhejiang's private academy might be more distressing than he had assumed. There's more than one victim. Chen Gu asked Inspector Li, why would the ballet shoes of the suicide girl be hidden here? Was there any mention of the girl's shoes in the case report? There's no record on the shoes. Inspector Li frowned. The shoes are all covered with dust even though they are hidden under the bed. This means that they have probably been left here for a long time already. However, they were placed neatly in a row, like someone took special care to look after them. Perhaps this is the murderer's fetish. Uncle Li, you're the police officer here, so you have to help return justice to the victims. Chen Gu dropped the boards to the side. The murderer had free access to the dance studio as well as this equipment storeroom, so he was probably a manager or guard. If what you're saying is true, then that does narrow down the investigation scope quite a bit. Inspector Li seemed to have been moved by the pair of darkened dancing shoes. Don't worry, I will not rest until I get to the bottom of this case. No matter who the murderer is, I'll have him punished to the full extent of the law. When Inspector Li said that, Chen Ji's black phone vibrated. He pulled it out to glance at it. There was a new message on the phone. Managed to locate Zhang Ye's red dancing shoes before dawn. Completed Zhang Ye's Bloody Heart mission completion rate, 50%. Zhang Ye's affection level toward you has increased. You can write something you want her to do in Zhang Ye's personal profile page. Note, it mustn't be against Zhang Ye's will. Chen Gu silently retreated to the door. Tonight's experience might have been harrowing, but at least the result is good. He opened up Zhang Ye's personal page, and the display turned red immediately. My demand mustn't be against Zhang Ye's will, that's the only requirement. After some thought, Chen Gu wrote, I hope Zhang Ye will listen to me forever. I'm sorry, but your demand is against Zhang Ye's will, please change it. I hope Zhang Ye will protect me from being harmed. I'm sorry, but your demand is against Zhang Ye's will, please change it. I hope Zhang Ye will not harm me or harbor any intention to kill me. That's doable, right? I'm sorry, but your demand is against Zhang Ye's will, please change it. Air. After trying it 3 more times and failing 3 more times, Chen Gu decided to give up. He would continue the research when he was back at his haunted house. To his surprise, when he exited Zhang Ye's personal page, there was another unread alert on the black phone. Haven't I finished the Bloody Heart mission already? Chen Gu opened the second message without much thought. The Spectre's favored, congratulations for completing rare level Ghost, Red Spectre's Bloody Heart mission. This mission is part of a side mission for a 4-star scenario School of the Afterlife. Note, when the Bloody Heart mission's completion rate reaches 100%, it'll unlock the trial mission for School of the Afterlife. Mission effective time is 3 months. Completing all the trial missions will unlock said scenario. School of the Afterlife Scream Factor 4 stars. Side Mission 1, Red Dancing Shoes, the school after midnight is the Red Swan stage. She is a wicked specter as well as a red ballet dancer. Mission Venue, Western Zhejiang's Private Academy. Side Mission 2, The Hanging Man, I never kid, not in life nor in death. Mission Venue, Western Zhejiang's Private Academy. Side Mission 3, The Stink, he collects all the trash in his bedroom just to hide an unspeakable secret. Mission Venue, Western Zhejiang's Private Academy. Side Mission 4, The Pen Spirit who refused to leave. Pen Spirit, can you tell me who will die next? Mission Venue, Muyang High School. Side Mission 5, The Fifth Cubicle in the Toilet. Every day at midnight, people swore they could see a red shadow appear inside the toilet. To catch her, I hid inside the 5th cubicle of the toilet. Mission Venue, Muyang High School. Side Mission 6, Deep Well, one brother and one sister went to school, but how come no one returned? Mission Venue, Muyang High School. Side Mission 7, the sealed classroom. There's a classroom at the end of the corridor that's always sealed. No one ever enters it, but every night, the classroom comes alive with activity. Mission Venue, Muyang High School. Side Mission 8, Eternal Life. In an undisclosed underground morgue, there's a group who seek eternal life. Mission Venue, Western Zhejiang's Medical University. Last mission, currently locked. Reading the series of message on the black phone, Chen-gu was baffled. 4-star scenario. Even a 1-star scenario manages to cause forensic science students to faint, so just how scary will a 4-star scenario be? Everyone has a threshold with regards to horror. Once that threshold is overshot, it might be harmful to the person's health. Chen-gu read the various side missions again, and just the mission description alone made his skin crawl. Most importantly, these were just side missions, the finale was still locked. Logically speaking, Chen-gu had to finish the 8 side missions first before he could unlock the final mission. A 4-star scenario is probably too hard for the current me. Perhaps I'll be able to challenge later, but definitely not now. Chen-gu closed the message and clicked into the unlockable scenario tab. Other than the third sick hall and the haunted hearse, there was now an additional school of the afterlife, but different from the previous 2, this scenario's name was written in blood red ink. So, this one scenario practically collects all the haunted school stories into one. In that case, even after this scenario is unlocked, it probably can't be released to every member of the public. Looking at the scream factor delineation of the various scenarios, a thought bubbled up in Chen Ji's mind. 1-star scenario should be open to anyone, but entrance to scenarios that were 3 stars or above should be limited to those who had survived 1- and 2-star scenarios. In other words, this could be considered a type of visitor protection. The playability of the haunted house will be increased in this manner as well. Those who have visited once may return to challenge a scarier scenario until they perfect every scenario. This means that they will have a different experience every time they visit, and this will definitely boost the popularity of my haunted house. Suddenly, Hisan's image appeared in Chen Ji's mind. He was technically the only visitor who had challenged more than one of the haunted house's scenarios. That kid is somewhat of a good luck charm of the haunted house. Perhaps I should invite him again when the new scenario is unlocked. There were many fresh ideas in his mind, like giving additional rewards and certificates after the visitors survived certain levels. This way it would encourage the visitors to break through to challenge scarier scenarios. This makes me feel like some kind of dungeon master. Chen-gu couldn't help but smile. In the future, there would probably be professional teams who came to his haunted house to understand the true meaning of fear. Why are you smiling dumbly to yourself? Looks like you up to some kind of no good. Inspector Lee came out from the room. He had completed the initial survey. I've communicated with Team 1 and Team 2, they couldn't find any trace of Zhangpeng. The atmosphere of this school weirds me out, and the environment is too complicated to navigate at night. We'll retreat for now and set up a plan when the investigation team gets here. Okay. Chen-gu had prepared to leave for a long time already. All his reasons for being there had been accomplished. Everyone thus retreated from the school grounds. The police sealed the gate, waiting for aid to arrive. The investigation team finally arrived when dawn came, and they looked as exhausted as Inspector Lee's group. After a simple greeting, Inspector Lee drove Chen-gu home in his car. Yet another sleepless night. Chen-gu finally relaxed when he was sitting in the back seat of the police car. He stretched lazily before lying down on the cushion. You're the first person that I've come across who can be so comfortable inside a police car, Inspector Lee commented with a degree of dissatisfaction. By the way, I have a few questions that I haven't had the chance to ask you until now. Then, don't ask. Chen-gu could already guess the questions. He used his backpack to smother his face and pretend to fall asleep. Why would you go to Western Zhejiang's private academy at midnight? And how did you know the exact time of death of the girl? This was 4 years ago, and even the forensic doctor wouldn't be able to tell me the time of death without referring to the case file, but you managed to do that. That's just too abnormal. Inspector Lee crawled into the driver's seat and started the engine. Lucky guesses. Chen-gu turned his body about. Uncle San Bao, can you turn the air conditioning on? You've dropped all formalities around me, haven't you? Inspector Lee grumbled as he turned on the air conditioning. It was then that his phone suddenly rang. Uncle, it's your phone. Talk some more and see if I'll toss you out of the car or not. Inspector Lee looked at the ID before answering it. He did not say a word, and there was no sound coming from the other end either. The call was ended 3 seconds later. Who is so brave to make prank calls to the police? Chen-gu turned to look but was surprised to find Inspector Lee's facial expression had softened. That's my wife. Every time I'm on a special mission, she'll give me a call to check on my safety. Due to the sensitive nature of certain missions, we've come up with our own style of communication. Instead of verbal communication, as long as I pick up the phone, that means that I'm still okay. Auntie sure cares about you. Of course. Inspector Lee put his phone away, and his face twisted with confusion. Wait, just who do you think you are? You call me uncle and my wife auntie. He waited for an answer, but it never came. He turned and realized Chen-gu had already fallen asleep. When the police car arrived at New Century Park, Chen-gu was shaken awake by Inspector Lee. The former left the car in a sort of daze, carrying his backpack. Be careful at all times. Zhang Peng is still out there. Based on the current situation and his twisted mentality, he might give up everything just to take revenge on you, Inspector Lee reminded Chen-gu. I know. The mention of Zhang Peng did wake Chen-gu up slightly. He waved at Inspector Lee before turning to enter New Century Park. The elderly guard was already asleep. Even as Chen-gu walked through the front door, he did not wake up. Tonight's reward is quite valuable. I can ask for a favor from Zhanya since I've completed her Bloody Heart mission, but would it be too much of a waste to have her eliminate the mirror monster for me? Chen-gu pulled out the black phone and clicked into Zhanya's page. The affection level had been raised from crazy about you to yours forever. I'll need to study this closer so that I maximize the usability of this chance. As he entered the haunted house, Chen-gu did not exit the page but continued reading through the details on Zhanya. When I have enough money, perhaps I should rent myself a room outside. Sleeping in the staff break room feels weird after a while, Chen-gu thought to himself as he walked down the dark corridor. He was familiar with every corner of this haunted house, even without light, he wouldn't knock into anything. When he passed the first-floor toilet, the wooden door creaked as if blown by the wind. The wooden door was not sturdy to begin with, and after being assaulted by Chen-gu using the mallet, the door itself had become misshapen. He tried to close the door as best as he could, but when he walked toward it, he noticed that the window in the toilet was half open. Did I forget to close the window when I left? The sky outside the window was brightening. Chen-gu stood at the window to inspect it. He didn't see anything like a footprint near or on it. It's probably due to the recent high amount of stress. Even so, Chen-gu grabbed the mop that was leaning against the wall as he headed toward the control room. The haunted house was fitted with cameras that covered every corner. A simple look at them would confirm for Chen-gu whether someone had snuck in or not. Pushing open the control room door, Chen-gu sat before the computer and booted up the computer. All the surveillance footage was stored inside this computer. Chen-gu looked for the ID of the camera at the entrance of the toilet and pulled up the video. He thought he was being overly cautious, but several minutes later, Chen-gu did discover a strange man on screen. The man had his head lowered and quickly rushed down the corridor once he exited the toilet. Someone did come in, there's another person hiding in this haunted house other than myself. That woke Chen-gu up completely. The man seems to know there's a camera at the entrance of the toilet and knows where he's going. This means that he has probably been inside the building before. There were several cameras installed on the corridor. After the mysterious man disappeared from the camera, Chingu searched for the ID of the next camera, which was placed at the corner of the corridor that led to the toilet. On the second video feed, it was shown that the strange man turned into the control room once he raced down the corridor. He headed for the control room directly, probably to destroy the evidence. This man knows the layout of my haunted house very well. There was only one name in Chen Ji's mind, and just as he was about to continue his investigation, he saw himself on screen. The video has rolled on to the present. That's me holding the black phone and the mop as I entered the control room. Wait, this means that the man hasn't left. Just as Chingu saw himself on screen, he grabbed the mop next to him and turned around. The locker that was about 2 meters behind him was shoved open, and a man with bloodshot eyes, holding a sharp knife in his hand, jumped out from it. Zhang Peng. Chingu screamed when he saw the man's twisted features. Probably agitated by Chen Ji's voice, Zhang Peng charged at him with the knife. Chingu calmed down quickly from the initial shock. He opened the room door that was behind him and retreated as he deflected Zhang Peng's assault. Even though Zhang Peng was handicapped, he fought with the passion of one who did not want his life anymore. The man knew this was the end of the line, and what he wanted now was someone to join him in death. Chingu evaded left and right as he moved toward the maintenance room. He looked like he was cornered, but that was part of his plan. Zhang Peng had put his life on the line, so escape was out of question. He needed to fight back, but the wooden mop in his hand wouldn't harm Zhang Peng, so Chingu was reminded of Dr. Skullcracker's iron hammer. Earlier, to avoid an unnecessary misunderstanding with the police, Chingu had hidden the hammer inside the maintenance room. The assault intensified. Zhang Peng seemed to have seen through Chen Ji's plan. He did not even attempt to avoid Chen Ji's hit as he allowed the wooden mop to smack on his body. His aim was to get close to Chingu. Very soon, Chingu retreated to the door of the maintenance room. He was biding the time to jump into the room, but before that could happen, he felt an extra weight on his body like he was carrying a boulder. "You're going to die today." Zhang Peng, who had been silent, suddenly cried out. Spirit had returned to the man's eyes, and his knife skill became much more agile. What's going on? The mirror monster has been controlling Zhang Peng until now. So where is the monster now? Chingu could feel his movement slowing down. He used his hand to feel behind him, but he couldn't feel anything. Something pressed hard on his shoulder, causing him to bend over slightly. He turned his head around to look, and a black shadow about the size of an adult man was riding on his back. The mirror monster. Panic flashed across his eyes. Chingu dipped to avoid a knife aiming at his neck, and he turned to blast through the door into the maintenance room. He ran toward the cupboards that held all the random junk. It's still not time to give up. Zhang Peng and the black shadow share one entity. If I use the hammer to incapacitate Zhang Peng, then I'll be able to stop the black shadow as well. Chingu felt like he was dragging a small mountain on his back. He had underestimated the black shadow's growth. Compared to the first time they met, this creature had become much harder to deal with. Something was choking the breath from his throat as the weight on his back continued to increase. The laughter of various individuals appeared in his ears, and when Chingu reached the cupboard, he was drained from exhaustion. Chen Ji's consciousness wavered, and a humming sound sung in his ears. Without turning to look, Chingu knew Zhang Peng was walking toward him with the knife. The monster on his back continued to press down on him. Chingu used every ounce of his energy to open the cupboard door. As he tried to search for the hammer through the junk, the black phone fell from his pocket, the screen still on Zhanya's personal page. The mirror monster had Chingu in a chokehold, and the murderer was inching toward him with a sharp knife. Chingu had no time to hesitate. When he saw Zhanya's page, he reached out to type 2 words: "Help me." The weird laugh in his mind grew louder. Zhang Peng's knife came at him before Chingu had the time to key in anything else. He turned around and grabbed anything from the cupboard that he could get his hands on to throw at Zhang Peng. His limbs were failing him, and the veins in Chen Ji's neck were protruding. Even without the stab from Zhang Peng, he would be strangled by the mirror monster. Chen Gu clawed violently at his neck, but he caught no purchase. It was as if there was nothing there. Chen Gu placed his last hope on the black phone. He turned his head to look at the phone on the ground and saw that there was a line of blood-red letters on screen. She has understood your demand, so please accept the content of the first agreement. It appeared like the demand went both ways. While Chen Gu asked something of Zhanya, she would also ask something of Chen Gu, and Chen Ji's order would only be carried out once the agreement had been reached. At a time like this, no matter how ridiculous the content of Zhanya's agreement was, Chen Gu would agree unhesitatingly. Inching his finger forward, Chen Gu pressed the "Yes" button on screen. The moment his finger touched the screen, the temperature of the small room dropped tremendously as cold drafts blew into the room from all corners. The weird laugh in Chen Ji's head stopped immediately. He could feel the monster on his back shiver, it could also feel fear. The sound of dripping suddenly appeared in the room like something was leaking. The mirror monster on Chen Ji's back released its hold on Chen Gu and escaped back into Zhang Peng's body. The maintenance room became eerily quiet. Even Zhang Peng knew something was wrong. This gambler who had nothing to lose did not choose to retreat at the last moment but raised the knife to charge at Chen Gu. However, he only took the first step when the expression on his face changed. The mirror monster had forcibly taken over his body, making him leave. The man and the ghost were quarreling, forcing them into inaction. While that was happening, Chen Ji's shadow slowly stood up, and a bloody dress appeared behind Chen Gu. Zhanya had probably left quite a heavy trauma on both the man and the ghost at Western Zhejiang's private academy because when they saw the red specter behind Chen Gu, a consensus was made, and the man turned to run. Without the constriction from the mirror monster, Chen Gu was released from the lock. He had almost been killed by Zhang Peng, and he was still reeling with anger, so naturally, he wouldn't let them escape so easily. He just stood up with the iron hammer when the red specter made her move. Zhanya seemed to have a fetish for cruel kills because even without the order from Chen Gu, needle-like black hairs shot into Zhang Peng's body. The murderer's footsteps slowed. Naturally, Chen Gu would not give up on this perfect opportunity. He swung the iron hammer on Zhang Ji's shoulder. The impact caused the man to fall forward. Making use of this opportunity, Chen Gu aimed yet another strike at Zhang Peng's upper calf. An ear-splitting shriek escaped from the maintenance room. The mirror monster inside Zhang Peng knew that the man was cornered, so it decided to abandon Zhang Peng and flew toward the toilet. Not good, there's a mirror inside the first-floor toilet. Before Chen Gu realized what had happened, Zhanya started to chase after the mirror monster. This shadow creature seemed to be highly interesting to her. I have to figure out a way to block the mirror. Chen Gu looked around him and spotted the half-full vat of fake blood left in the maintenance room. The toilet's door creaked in the wind. When Chen Gu arrived, he saw that half of the mirror body had already been punctured by Zhanya's hair, but it was just inches away from the mirror. You're not getting away that easily this time. Unsure whether it would be of use or not, Chen Gu splashed the fake blood all over the mirror. The black shadow hesitated before the mirror. Before it could react, tendrils of black hair curled around its body like snakes. Chen Gu could barely make out its humanoid shape anymore as it was caught in the hair. The bloody dress fluttered in the wind. After Zhanya got bored, she tore the black shadow that was compressed into a ball into two. She swallowed half of it before tearing up the other half into pieces and gently blowing it into Chen Ji's face. Chen Gu felt like something had entered his eyes, and his body shivered involuntarily from the sudden cold. What was that? Chen Gu wanted to get an answer from Zhanya, but after fulfilling her part of the agreement, this cruel red specter disappeared into his shadow. The toilet door was still squeaking on its hinges, but there was nothing left inside the toilet to suggest that the crazy things that Chen Gu had just witnessed had truly happened. Just like that, Zhanya ate half of the mirror monster and blew the other half into my eyes. Chingu looked at the mirror and a sensation that felt like he was dreaming overwhelmed him. The mirror monster has been taken care of, so there shouldn't be a new number that surfaces on the mirror tomorrow night, right? Until now, he could not understand what the numbers meant, but he had a feeling they pointed to a huge secret. After closing the door, Chingu used his phone to contact the police. He did not trouble Inspector Lee this time. After all, the man wasn't a machine, he had been required to deal with more than enough over the past few days already. Leaning against the wall, Chingu glanced at Zhangpeng, who lay as if dead on the floor. When the mirror monster left his body, it seemed to have taken something from the man. The man's eyes looked blankly forward, and his gaze was soulless. I suppose this is a kind of karma. At 6 a.m., the investigation team from the main city, officers from Western Zhejiang Police Station, and members of the park's management all gathered at the entrance of the haunted house. The last suspect from the Ping An apartment case had finally been caught. After watching Zhang Peng being hauled into the police car, Chen Ji's taut nerves finally relaxed. He did not stay to chat but returned to the haunted house and locked himself in the break room. The case at the Ping An apartment is finally wrapped up. The mirror monster has been eaten by Zhanya, so there are no more hidden threats lingering in my haunted house, meaning I can finally open all of the scenarios up for business in the morning. Chingu lay in bed, thinking about his future. What I should focus on next is the expansion of the haunted house because the new scenarios won't be unlocked without the expansion. After I wake up, I should go talk to Uncle Su. In any case, I have to convince him to let me rent the underground parking lot. As he tried to fall asleep, Chingu felt a cold breeze caress his body. The chill did not leave even when he wrapped himself up in the covers. The chill seemed to come from his eyes. Zhanya did blow part of the mirror monster into my face, could this be caused by that? Chingu grabbed a small piece of mirror to look at his face. Everything looked normal except perhaps his pupils turned darker like the surface of a bottomless lake. Eventually, fatigue caught up to him. Chingu placed the mirror underneath his pillow and soon drifted off to sleep. At 10:30 a.m., before he managed to catch several hours of sleep, Chingu was woken up by the call on his phone. He looked at the ID and answered it. Xiao Wan, you can have the morning off. Come back in the afternoon. Boss. There are so many people down here. There are even police and reporters, what have you done? But I've not done anything. Wait for me, I'm going down now. Chingu leaned closer to the window to glance down. There was indeed a great crowd outside the haunted house, and the number was still growing. Boss, listen to me, surrender while you still can before this gets worse. Surrender my foot. Just wait for me. After hanging up, Chingu quickly put on his clothes, washed his face, and ran to the door. He pulled back the heavy curtains and dashed out the gates. When Chingu made his appearance, the rowdy crowd started to quiet down. The surrounding visitors looked at Chingu with curiosity and more than a bit of disappointment in their eyes. Obviously, they had expected the person who was surrounded by the police to look less normal. This was the first time that Chingu had felt so many eyes on him. He seemed to shrivel up in shyness, but he felt like he should say something. Do any of you mind telling me what this is for? You are Chingu. The leading officer carried a box in his arms. He was slightly rotund, but his eyes were sharp and penetrating, which created a rather humorous contrast to his babyish face. Yes. Can I see your identification? Chingu searched for a long time before producing his identification card. All this while, he was silently studying the officer before him. The officer was wearing a uniform different from Inspector Lee and his men. Okay, thank you for your cooperation. The officer smiled. He waved at the reporters beside him, opened the box in his hand, and announced in an official tone, for providing the murder case at Ping and Apartments with crucial evidence. Zhejiang Municipal Bureau for Public Security is awarding this Level 3 Public Security Medal of Honor to Chen Gu. Hopefully, Chen Gu will appreciate this honor and continue to contribute to the maintenance and improvement of the public security of our society. This series of announcements confused Chen Gu. Things were happening too quickly for him to handle. As the box was pushed into his hands, he looked at the shiny metal, and there was only one thought on his mind, which was only half awake. Where's the reward money? The slightly rotund officer stood beside Chen Gu and paraded him to the wall of reporters. The whole process lasted for 15 minutes. After the crowd dispersed and the reporters left, Chen Gu quietly sought out the rotund officer. "Sir, how may I refer to you?" "The name's Yan, you can call me Captain Yan. I was classmates with Western Zhejiang's Zhou Li. In fact, he has told me many things about you." Captain Yan seemed to be a friendly character. His eyes that looked upon Chen Gu were glowing the praise. "The way you handled the case at Ping and Apartments is impressive. When you were being chased by the killer, your reaction and observation skills surprised both me and Zhou Li." After being fed the series of praises, Chen Gu felt too embarrassed to jump to the topic of the reward money. "All I did was run crazily around the woods. The case wouldn't have been solved without the police. In fact, I would have been the killer's latest victim if not for all of you." After the trading of compliments, Captain Yan realized that Chen Gu was still lingering shamelessly around the police car. He smiled to himself because it finally dawned on him why Chen Gu was there. "Xiao Chen, you'll need to go to the main city's bureau personally to get the reward money. Due to the large scale of the case, it took a while for the reward to be approved, but you can go get it now. I hope you understand." Of course, of course." After knowing where to get the reward money, Chen Ji's heart that hung in the air finally settled. "I came here today to thank you in person. Every unsolved case is like a boulder pressing on every police officer's heart, and it's something passed on from the senior to the junior. 4 years ago, I was also involved in this case, so thank you for solving this trouble in my heart." Captain Yan smiled sincerely. "By the way, the elder from Ping and Apartment also wished to speak to you. The elder is incapacitated, can no longer move his lower body, and has lost much of his capacity to talk, but his mind is still sharp. He knows it is you who saved him and solved the death of his family. He also wants to thank you in person." "I understand." For Chen Gu, the case was merely a mission dispensed by the black phone, but for the victims and their family, it was a meaningful closure. "You'd better visit him soon. The elder is currently in hospital." Perhaps it was the emotions that ran high, or perhaps the question that has been keeping him alive has been answered. In any case, he's not doing so well. After that, Captain Yan got into the car. "Okay, I'll visit him later in the afternoon." Looking at the special uniform that he wore, Chen Gu felt this Captain Yan carried a greater responsibility than he let on. After the police car left, the park's workers surrounded Chen Gu. "Boss, are you going to be on television again?" "Not bad, there's even a medal." After sending them off, Chen Gu found Uncle Su in the crowd, and he dragged him to a corner to speak. "Uncle Su, what's the update regarding the rental of the underground parking lot?" "The money will be coming soon." The mention of underground parking lot made Uncle Su frown. "This is not the issue of budget. Xiao Chen, I cannot sit idle and watch you jump into your own grave. The visitor number of the park has been steadily dropping, and everyone is trying to flee, don't you understand that?" "I do understand that, and I know what I'm doing," Chen Gu replied confidently. The haunted house might carry the key to the disappearance of his parents. Only by continuing to expand it would Chen Gu have the chance and the ability to interact with the other world. Still so stubborn. Uncle Su tried to persuade Chen Gu for a long time, but it was to no avail. In the end, he could only sigh. "Come with me then. Due to the appearance of the police, Mr. Luo is also with us. You might as well talk to him in person. Director Luo is here." Chen-gu had heard his parents mention this actual owner of New Century Park many times already. What do you think? The police set up a security perimeter around the park. Did you think they would not inform the management? To provide full cooperation, Director Luo has been staying at the park for the past few days. Uncle Su led Chen-gu to a building on the northern side of the park. This was the second tallest structure in the park, behind the Ferris wheel. When you meet Director Luo later, remember to watch what you say. The less you say, the less likely you'll make a mistake, you understand? Chen-gu followed Uncle Su into the elevator that led them up to the top floor. They stopped before the door of an office. The door wasn't locked. Uncle Su knocked on it, and very soon, a man in his 50s came out from it. The man was of average height, and his hair was half white. His features were gentle, and the suit he wore was not branded, but it was clean and didn't have the slightest crease on it. This is Mr. Luo. He looks so different from the picture. From how Chen-gu saw it, the man standing before him looked more like a retired teacher. How can I help? The man inquired in a soft-spoken tone, surprisingly unbusinesslike. Director Luo, this is the brave Xiao Chen who helped the police capture the fugitive. Uncle Su pulled Chen-gu to his side. He's here to get an update about the thing I reported to you earlier. He wishes to rent the unused underground parking lot. I understand. Leave us be, you can go busy yourself with your work. Director Luo signaled for Uncle Su to leave. Director Luo had Chen-gu sit on the sofa while he poured 2 cups of tea. I've been informed you wish to rent the underground parking lot. Do you mind telling me why you plan to do that? I wish to expand the haunted house. I want to build an underground maze inside the parking lot. An underground maze. That's not a bad idea, but do you have the budget and ability to handle something of that scale? The rental for the space will be small in comparison to the finances you need to set up the place. Director Luo leaned against the couch, his eyes colored with lethargy and tiredness. I am not against your idea, and I can rent you the place, but before that, I need to ask you a few questions. Even though he had gotten a verbal agreement from Director Luo, the man had not yet mentioned the rental amount, so Chen-gu was still nervous. Ask away. You're the owner of a haunted house, so you know better than I do how high the early investment in a haunted house is. Also, different from hotels or motels, where you can still sell or reuse the tables, chairs, and utensils, if your haunted house fails, what are you going to do with the spooky props and items? Director Luo did raise a valid concern, something that Chen-gu had not even considered before. Even if you manage to do a good job reviving the haunted house, how are you going to solve the issue of returning customers? A haunted house is a one-time exhaustion product. There might be some initial hype, but it'll eventually run out because the number of your potential customers is only so big. You're going to invest greatly into this, are you confident you'll even earn back your capital? One final question, by building your haunted house underground, how are you going to promote it? Your customers' number is highly dependent on the park's visitor number. How is your haunted house going to survive when the day comes for the park to close? Chen-gu knew that Director Luo was stopping him out of kindness. In fact, he knew that those who advised him against investing in the haunted house were only looking out for him. They had his best interests at heart. Director Luo's 3 questions revolved around Chen Ji's mind. The first 2 questions were easily solved with the presence of the black phone, so Chen Ji's real conundrum was the last question. If New Century Park closed, naturally, his haunted house would close, too. Moving to another place would be difficult, just the number of documents would cause Chen-gu enormous headaches. Furthermore, his budget was limited, to find another location to fit the black phone scenarios would be impossible. Have you seriously considered these 3 questions? Director Luo seemed to anticipate Chen Ji's answer. Why don't you go back for now? We mustn't jump into important decision without detailed research and thorough contemplation. Chen-gu sat unmoved on the couch. He turned to look at Director Luo and asked directly, is the park really going to close soon? Director Luo did not confirm or deny, but the tiredness in his eyes deepened. If I say the park is really closing soon, will you insist on renting the underground parking lot? I will. Chen Ji's answer surprised Director Luo. Director Luo, I already have the solution for your first and second questions. And your third question is not valid. There was fire dancing in Chen Ji's eyes. The young man powered on fearlessly. My haunted house has never relied on anyone else before, and my visitor number will not be entirely dependent on the park. Give me time, and I will not only attract countless visitors to the haunted house, I will also use it to revive the entire park. Renting the underground parking lot is just the first plan. My plan is to build the world's first unique theme park that is based on horror and terror. After he finished what he had to say, Chen Gu finally remembered Uncle Su's advice: the less you say, the less likely you'll make a mistake. He looked at Director Luo with uncertainty. He regretted telling him everything that was inside his heart. After listening to Chen Gu, Director Luo put down his cup, and the tiredness in his eyes had disappeared. After a moment's silence, he suddenly laughed and said, "You remind me too much of myself when I was young." He stood up and walked to open the curtain. The whole park was within view from the office. I'm the most devastated and most unwilling for the closing of New Century Park. He opened the window and allowed the wind to ruffle his peppered hair. This park means the world to me. If possible, I wish for it to stay open forever. Director Luo turned to smile at Chen Gu. His smile was complicated. It was a calm smile of a man who had seen the world rise and fall, one who had surrendered to the vagaries of fate. I've heard about your story. After your parents' disappearance, you quit your day job to take over their haunted house. In a way, our stories are very similar, but you are luckier than I am. He picked up a picture frame from the table. It was the only picture frame in the room. It had the picture of a pair of father and daughter. The father was of average height and had a gentle demeanor. The girl in his arms was cute, but her hands were twisted at a painful angle, and there seemed to be no life in her eyes. This is my daughter. She suffered from serious aphasia and required a special device to even stand upright. God was harsh on her, but she was a strong little girl who loved to smile, not only to me but to the world. Director Luo turned to look at the sky outside the window. But the world didn't smile back at her. I used to take my daughter to the garden for walks, but none of the kids wanted to play with her. When she turned to look at me helplessly, I knew that she was afraid that she had done something wrong, and that was why she was being isolated. I didn't know how to console her, so we only took her out during the rainy days so that she wouldn't have to face the unfeeling crowd. Perhaps it was then that the thought to build my daughter her very own theme park appeared in my mind. Unfortunately, she didn't live to see the day the park was open. Putting down the frame, Director Luo's eyes were still surprisingly calm. Many people don't understand why I would risk bankruptcy to keep an outdated theme park alive, but I believe perhaps you do. I do. Chen Gu had already stood up earlier. He had not expected that Director Luo would reveal such intimate information to him. Everyone is trying to find a way out, but you're different. You've surprised me. After closing the window, Director Luo pulled out a document from his drawer. Actually, when Uncle Su came to me with your request, I had already approved it. Take it. Come to me if you need any help, but remember, you only have 2 to 3 months left. Chen Gu accepted the document, and the first line read New Century Park's Underground Parking Lot Usage Agreement. After flipping through it, Chen Gu did not find any clauses related to rental. Director Luo, is the document missing something? Have you not seen a free rental agreement before? I've stamped the document, so it'll be effective after you sign it. The document is effective until the park closes, so make good use of it and don't let me down. Director Luo's mood seemed to have improved greatly. He poured himself another cup of tea and said, "You should be quite busy from now on, so I won't hold you any longer." When Chingu exited the office holding the contract, he still could not believe that he had managed to get the park's underground parking lot without paying a single dime. According to the contract, he was allowed free use of the parking lot as long as the park did not go under. Chingu assumed that Director Luo was being so generous because the park would close in another 2 or 3 months' time when the new park at Eastern Zhejiang opened. The underground parking lot is a third of the size of the park. Even though it has been abandoned, to be able to rent it for free is still a wonderful surprise. Chingu felt his luck had gotten much better after taking care of the mirror monster. He had received a Medal of Honor, the reward money was coming soon, and he had solved the issue of expansion, everything was looking up. Could it be that removing dirty things can improve my luck? Chingu did not think that things would be so coincidental, the thought was merely to humor himself. After returning to the haunted house, Chingu started his work for the day. He had Xiao Wan put on the park uniform and stand outside the haunted house to sell tickets while he roamed through the murder by midnight scenario, chasing the visitors about in his Dr. Skullcracker uniform. Chingu exited the haunted house at 5 p.m. He let Xiao Wan leave early before going to get his money. This will be the first time in my life there have been 4 digits in my bank account. I deserve some celebration tonight. Chingu changed into a clean outfit in the staff break room and was about to leave, when he saw a small ragdoll lying beside his bed. The small fella had most of her body hidden underneath the bed like she was playing hide and seek. The day is still bright, but you're out here already. Chingu was suddenly reminded of the thing Captain Yen had told him that morning. The grandpa's situation seems to be deteriorating, and he has no family around him. I should go pay him a visit. Chingu poked Xiao Xiao on her stomach before putting her in his pocket and leaving the haunted house. At 6:15 p.m., Chingu exited the bureau with the reward money of 36,000, which was less than he had expected. After purchasing a fruit basket and some milk, Chingu departed for Zhejiang People's Hospital. With the nurse leading the way, he entered a sickbay on the 3rd floor. He was there only to visit the elderly grandfather, but to his surprise, he ran into a familiar face there. Inspector Lee, why are you here? Sitting beside the bed, Inspector Lee was feeding the elder some porridge. He was as careful as a little girl when he took care of the old man. This is weird, how come I keep on running into you everywhere I go? Inspector Lee placed a towel on the elder's chest. After a good night's sleep, the station manager saw how tired I was, so he assigned me a lighter job for the day. Law enforcement even cares about things like this. The elder came into the mishap under our watch, so before we can find him a personal caretaker, it's only fair that we look after him. Inspector Lee tried feeding him twice, but the elder man seemed to have no appetite. He did not force it but put the spoon down to point at Chingu, who stood at the door. Sir, this is the young man who provided us with the crucial evidence to solve the case and the young man who called us that night to save you. When he saw Chingu, the old man's arm that was still movable twitched, but it was unclear what he was trying to communicate. Thinking back, I should be thanking the old sir. If not for the fact you broke the bowl at Ping an apartment to warn me, I wouldn't have realized how weird things were. Chingu placed the fruit basket and milk on the counter. Looking at the old man who looked like he could depart at any moment, Chinji's heart shook. Inspector Lee, do you mind leaving the room for a minute? I have something personal to talk to the old sir. Inspector Lee did not know what Chingu was up to, but due to trust, he walked out without asking any questions. After closing the door, Chingu pulled the doll out from his pocket. Old sir, I brought Xiao Xiao to come see you. When Chingu took out Xiao Xiao, the old man in the bed did not show any response, but when his murky eyes fell on the ragdoll, the man's pupils shook greatly, and a voice that sounded like it came from a broken bellow escaped from the old man's lips. The arm that could still move reached out as if to grab something. You can see her. Chingu did not expect this. He had brought Xiao Xiao there to see her family, but he did not expect that the senior would be able to see Xiao Xiao, who possessed the ragdoll. He hurried to the bedside and placed the doll lightly in the old man's arm. The senior's arm hugged the doll tightly before he settled down again. According to legends, people are able to see to the other world at the end of their life. The black phone in Chen Ji's pocket vibrated. He exited the room to give the grandfather and the granddaughter their privacy. I heard some noises coming from inside the room earlier. What did you tell him? Listen to me, the senior's situation is very fragile, and he won't be able to survive too much of a shock. Inspector Lee stood outside the door. Should things turn awry, he would rush in immediately. I only brought the old sir, the person he wished to see the most. Chen Gu sat on the bench provided in the corridor and pulled out the black phone. He realized the reason of the vibration was because on the affection page, Yin Xiaoxiao's affection level had increased from slightly favorable opinion to can be trusted. The little fella is the most unique baleful specter I've ever met. I wonder what will happen when I raise her affection level to the maximum. Chen Gu returned the phone to his pocket and leaned against the wall. Uncle San Bao, don't worry, the old sir will recover. You sure are optimistic. Chen Gu and Inspector Li chatted for a long time. When they entered the room, the senior's condition had stabilized. He waved at Chen Gu, but nobody understood what he meant. After nodding at the nurse, Chen Gu left with Xiao Xiao. The little fella hid inside the doll, apparently asleep. After getting a quick dinner at the roadside stall, Chen Gu rushed back to the haunted house. I still haven't accepted today's daily mission yet. I wonder if there's still time. Among the 3 daily missions, the most suitable was definitely the expansion. All he needed to do was choose the direction of expansion and a general location. Last night, before leaving for Western Zhejiang's private academy, Chen Gu had glossed through the 3 daily missions. The simple mission was to check for hidden security threats, the normal mission was to find a suitable location to expand the haunted house, the nightmare mission was to identify the other individual that shared his room. If he wanted the biggest reward, naturally, the nightmare mission was the best choice. However, according to his previous 2 experience, nightmare missions had a time requirement, and they were mostly around midnight. Once he missed that period, there was high chance the mission would fail automatically. There's no need to risk it. Chen Gu selected to accept the normal mission. Normal mission, you've achieved the criteria to enable the first expansion of the haunted house, do search for a suitable location soon. This was the first time that Chen Gu had expanded the haunted house. He did not know how to go about it, and the black phone did not give him any instructions. I can't find a guide, so it looks like I'll have to slowly research it on my own. Chen Gu looked at the interface of the app, and 2 places captured his attention. My team of ghosts and ghouls was still empty, which meant that neither Zhang Ye nor Yin Xiaoxiao had become part of the haunted house. Yin Xiaoxiao was probably because he had not earned enough affection points, while Zhang Ye Chen Gu would be thankful if she just stopped trying to kill him, much less asking her to join the haunted house. The second thing that attracted Chen Ji's attention was the tab for haunted house expansion. The original gray font had turned red. After clicking on it, a sentence appeared on screen. Please select the location of the entrance. If the words become red, it means that they're clickable. The location of the entrance, you say. The underground parking lot Chen Gu rented was huge, but the only downside was that the entrance to the parking lot was outside of the park. The path was not streamlined, so he planned to open a new path underneath the haunted house, one that directly led to the underground parking lot. Normally, large attractions like roller coasters or Ferris wheels were not allowed to have any space underneath them, but since the haunted house was located at the isolated corner, it was the sole exception at New Century Park. In fact, the space right underneath Chen Ji's building was the parking lot. Holding the black phone, Chen Gu walked to the entrance to the Night of the Living Dead scenario that was on the first floor. After gaining the 2 1-star scenarios, Ming Han and Murder by Midnight, this scenario had pretty much been abandoned. I'll set the door beside the entrance to this scenario. If it is necessary in the future, I can just remove and replace the Night of the Living Dead scenario. That was Chen Ji's plan. He used a piece of chalk to mark out an area on the floor, but he realized after drawing it that he had no way of communicating his plan to the black phone. Since he received the mysterious phone, it had been a one-way communication. Have I missed something? Chen Gu clicked through the app. When he tried tapping the home page twice, the haunted house that was used as the background suddenly zoomed out until Chen Gu could see its layout, which was similar to his actual haunted house, including the locations and setup of the many scenarios. So, I do it here. Chen Gu found the scenario for Night of the Living Dead on screen. He clicked on an empty space beside the entrance, and a question instantly popped up on screen. Are you sure you want to place the entrance here? Yes. Please select the expansion direction. Downward. After making his choice, the screen returned to normal, and several other messages popped up. Only through continuous expansion will your haunted house be able to play host to more homeless spirits and thus collect more screams. Congratulations for completing the normal mission. Obtained reward: a free spin at the Wheel of Misfortune. Congratulations for completing your first ever expansion. Special reward: a unique construct. Obtained midnight ticket counter, broken. Midnight ticket counter, broken. There's a 1 in 1,000 chance for you to attract special visitors. They are different from others and might lend you a helping hand. Chen Gu read the messages carefully. The mission had rewarded him with a free spin at the Wheel of Misfortune, but there was too much of uncertainty to this reward. Only by trading 100 screams would he get the chance to spin it once. According to the description on the phone, there were definitely some useful things that could be won from the lucky draw. However, even Chen Gu had scared himself with how lucky he was. What if he won another cursed love letter? The two baleful specters might just split himself perfectly in half so that each of them could have their way with him equally. An image of the two spirits holding bloodied knives in their hands arguing over who would lay claim to his skull and body appeared in his mind. Too soon, too soon. The Wheel of Misfortune was thus put on the back burner, so Chen Gu turned to look at the other reward, the broken midnight ticket counter. His haunted house had been missing a specialized ticket counter. After all, before obtaining the black phone, he had at most 10 visitors in a week, hence there was no reason to build a ticket counter. The black phone has helped me solve a problem, but what is the meaning of this 1 in 1,000 chance of attracting special visitors? Does it mean ghosts? Chen Gu purposely walked to the front door, but the gate had remained the same, nothing had changed. Perhaps the change will happen after midnight like how it did with the murder by midnight scenario. Since he had received the rewards, Chen Gu stopped worrying about them. He cleaned the place while waiting for midnight to arrive. Even though the mirror monster had been vanquished, it did not mean that the number on the mirror would disappear. Chen Gu rolled up his sleeves as he cleaned the fake blood off the toilet's mirror. He was acting in such a hurry because there had been a little incident that afternoon. A visitor had asked to use the toilet when he was inside the haunted house. Chen Gu had led him to the toilet, but when the man had seen the fake blood that pooled around the floor, he had refused to enter the toilet. He had held his pee in until his face was green as Chen Gu led him out of the haunted house. The scary places should be scary, but other places should be as comfortable as possible. After all, we're in the service business. That was some advice that Chen Ji's father had once given him, and he remembered it to this day. Chen Gu finished cleaning the fake blood at around 11 p.m. He also fixed the broken toilet door. Then he stood before the mirror with his phone. He checked his profile on the video sharing app. His number of followers was slowly increasingly, and his videos were heavily shared. In fact, some advertisers had come to him with offers already. I need to pay attention to the videos and live streams as well. After all, they're my main source of promotion. When it was 11:59 p.m., Chen Gu put away his phone and stood before the mirror. Similar to his first nightmare mission, he locked the toilet from within and turned off all the lights. The toilet was dark and the world was so silent that Chen Gu could hear his own heartbeat. He stared unblinkingly at the mirror before him. When the clock struck 12, the mirror turned blurry like it was starting to mist. Then, a number appeared in the middle of the mirror: 0. The changing number surprised Chen-gu. He had thought this number was something left behind by the mirror monster. Since the monster had been consumed by Zhangya already, the number should have disappeared along with it. The number has nothing to do with the mirror monster. He took out his phone to snap a picture of the number, but as he raised his arms, his whole body froze. The reflection in the mirror shifted from reality, and the door to one of the cubicles turned red. It was a red that was unmistakable. It was as if the cubicle was filled with blood, and fresh blood was still leaking out from the surfaces. Why would this change happen to the cubicle with the squatting toilet? Using his phone to record this curious phenomenon, he slowly turned around to slowly push open the cubicle's door. In the darkened room, the blood-red cubicle was exceptionally eye-grabbing. Chen-gu did not understand what was happening. He took a cautious step forward, and when half of his upper body reached into the cubicle, a strange sensation overwhelmed him. Something sticky covered his skin like he was being swallowed and compressed. He immediately retreated, and 1 minute later, the cubicle in the mirror returned to normal. When Chen-gu walked into the cubicle again, the strange sensation was no longer there. The red door in the mirror only appeared for 1 minute after midnight, and everything returned to normal after that. Why would the cubicle door in the mirror turn red? And beyond that, even the walls and paraphernalia behind it were all blood red. Chen-gu switched on the light. He leaned against the window and started to think. Could that be the mirror world? The mirror monster escaped from this blood-red world? To confirm his suspicion, he searched for the details of his first nightmare mission on the black phone. It requires plenty of courage, incredible luck, and a bit of luck to see the hidden world. Then, there's a high chance that the hidden world mentioned in the phone refers to the blood-red world inside the cubicle. Chen-gu tried to think back to the situation that night. Even though he did not open his eyes, he did pay plenty of attention to his surroundings with his ears. Thinking back, I do remember hearing the cubicle door creak. It was also after that noise that weird things started to happen. At the time, Chen-gu had assumed it was the wind, but now he revised his theory. Perhaps the cause of the creaking was the mirror monster escaping the blood-red world. The mirror is most likely the buffer space between the two worlds. The cubicle in the mirror was opened, and the monster escaped from the blood-red world. However, due to the disruption from the doll, it was trapped inside the mirror. Chen-gu looked at the wooden door of the cubicle in question, and a weird thought cropped up his mind. What if I enter the cubicle in the real world and the door turns red in the mirror? Will that transport me to the other world? Shaking that crazy thought out of his mind, Chen-gu returned to stand before the mirror. The blood-red cubicle appeared in the mirror after the number dropped to 0. Looks like all my previous speculation was wrong. The number has nothing to do with killing. It is probably a countdown, perhaps representing how many more days the mirror monster could exist in the real world. The door in the mirror had returned to normal, but Chen-gu did not dare assume that it would not appear again. There was a possibility that it would continue to appear every night at midnight as long as the mirror monster did not return to it. If it continues to appear tomorrow night, I'll need to remove the mirror. That's the only thing I can do now. Chen-gu found a heavy black cloth to cover the mirror and left the toilet. After returning to the staff break room, Chen-gu pulled out the black phone to check the newly refreshed daily missions. Easy mission: a normal haunted house experience should not create permanent trauma to its visitors. I hope you understand this simple theory. Please improve the haunted house's security by inspecting the security threats hidden around the haunted house. Normal mission: a single hand cannot clap. A good haunted house needs a good management team. Recruit more talents, they will definitely help when the situation demands it. Nightmare mission: there has always been a second occupant inside your room, wouldn't you like to meet said person? Chen-gu was familiar with these 3 missions. He was conflicted. Nightmare mission was the best choice if he wanted to expand his haunted house faster, but after the incident with the mirror monster, he was wary of choosing nightmare missions. I'll think about it tomorrow, I deserve a good sleep tonight. Ever since he received the black phone, Chungu had not had a good night's sleep. If this continued, his physical body might not be able to withstand it. Pulling the sheet around him, Chungu soon fell asleep. The next morning at 8 a.m., Chungu, who was fully recovered, rushed out of his room. The first place he visited was the entrance to the Night of the Living Dead scenario. The space that he had selected last night had experienced some changes. There was now an additional path leading downward. The black phone sure is effective. A tunnel had been dug through the ground. He walked down the stairs and soon reached the abandoned underground parking lot. The space was empty and destitute, and there was barely a working light. That's it. The expansion is only adding a set of stairs. Chungu was rather disappointed, but reminding himself that the large space was his to toy with relit his passion and desire. There are 3 more months until Eastern Zhejiang's virtual reality futuristic carnival is completed. I'll need to unlock as many scenarios as I can within these 3 months to upgrade the haunted house to build a theme park that is no less interesting than the opposing park. Returning to the first floor, Chungu walked to the haunted house's front door with the black phone. Between the gates and the haunted house's entrance corridor stood a new semi-transparent wooden construct that was painted black. It looked like 2 dressers that had been sewn together. This is the midnight ticket counter. It looks so damn crude. Chungu opened the door and took a seat within. The interior of the place was so cramped that he felt like he was lying inside an uncomfortable coffin. This midnight ticket counter is broken, but there's no noticeable way to fix it. This black phone keeps on giving weird stuff. Chungu exited the counter. The more he looked at the construct, the more he felt it was not made for living souls. Boss. Su Wan jogged toward him in her casual outfit, holding 2 steaming buns in her hands. Looking at the cheerful Su Wan, Chen Ji's mood brightened instantly. This girl tended to be a bit clueless at times, but she had a natural charm that could brighten up the gloomiest of days. Accepting the offering from Su Wan, Chungu chomped on the bun happily. Why are you here so early today? Boss, look. Su Wan sat down beside Chungu on the steps. She pulled out her phone to show Chungu the long list of news and videos that were all on the case at Ping An Apartments. These are all about you, boss, you're famous. Let me see. Chungu looked at the articles, not expecting the short interview from the day before to have gone viral. Such a waste. Waste? Why? I think it's rather swell. Su Wan's face was flushed, probably from the little jog earlier. At the time, I was too focused on the reward money that I forgot this was a perfect promotional opportunity, Chungu said grumpily as he swiped through the articles. If I knew it would go viral, I would have interrupted Captain Yen to promote our haunted house. Look at some of these articles, they even got the facts wrong. They didn't even put down the address of our haunted house. Xiao Wan, this is your job for the day. Later, we will both go on to these comment sections to announce our identity and drop the address of the haunted house. Those who come with proof of our comments will get a 20% discount. That sounds so unethical. Su Wan was embarrassed doing such a thing, but she did end up following Chen Ji's instructions. At 9 a.m., when the park opened for business, both of them put away their phones and prepared to work. After opening the gates, Su Wan finally saw the midnight ticket counter. Boss, did you make this yesterday? Yes, it's ugly, but it's usable. Indeed, I also think it's about time we have a ticket counter. Looking at the serious expression on Su Wan's face, Chungu sighed internally, such a good worker, never once doubted my words. They both entered the haunted house. Su Wan went to put on her makeup while Chungu hauled several wooden planks out from the props room to block the entrance to the underground parking lot. The new scenarios had not been unlocked yet, so the place still had no use. After all the preparation had been made, it was time to start the day. Even though it was a holiday period, there was already a line in front of the haunted house. It was not that long a line, but it was already an impressive improvement compared to before. Su Wan was busy chasing people around as the ghost bride inside the Minghun scenario, while Gu had to split himself between selling tickets and scaring people as Dr. Skullcracker inside the Murder by Midnight scenario. It was harsh maintaining the large haunted house with just the two of them. It was worth noting that Xiao Xiao would have surprise interactions with the visitors inside the Murder by Midnight scenario. This ragdoll had a penchant of trailing behind the visitors, which worried Gu because he was afraid that the visitors might just snatch her home. The two finally caught a break around noon. Gu checked on the black phone. Both reputation and visitor number had increased tremendously, and he wasn't far from the second expansion. 2 workers managing 2 scenarios is already at its limit. After unlocking the new scenario, I'll need to recruit new workers. Gu looked at the black phone. The nightmare missions were often ridiculous, but easy and normal missions normally would point out the weaknesses of the haunted house directly, and completing them would improve the establishment. Even the phone has issued a recruitment mission. Looks like I'll need to get on that soon. Ever since the old workers that followed Ge's parents handed in their resignation, he had been wary of hiring new blood. If only Xiao Xiao and Zhangya would listen to my commands, they would be the perfect employees. Of course, this was merely a fanciful thought. To have Xiao Xiao and Zhangya scare people inside the haunted house, Xiao Xiao would be fine, but Zhangya would probably create an actual crime scene. My team of ghosts and ghouls is still empty. I wonder when that will change. Gu sat on the steps outside the haunted house. He was catching a much-needed breather before throwing himself back into work. The sun rose to its highest point, and the visitors started to dwindle to avoid the sun. It was then that Ge's black phone vibrated. He clicked the message open, and the content gave him quite a shock. The midnight ticket counter's effect has been triggered. The first special visitor has appeared. Please make use of this opportunity. The result will be different based on your choice. The effect has been triggered. Even at the 1 in 1,000 chance based on my previous experience, this cannot be anything good. Gu stood up straight like a soldier preparing for war. He scanned around the haunted house. The sun is shining bright, so it cannot be a specter. It was the point of the day when the heat was at its highest. The visitors that walked around the park had visibly decreased. Is it that an arguing couple? The girl is so pretty, but the guy is so ugly, there must be some problem. Who is Uncle Su talking to? A new worker. How come I have not seen that person before? While Gu was speculating, a skinny, dark-skinned woman about 30 wandered over with light steps. Could it be her? Gu studied the woman's appearance silently. Her skin was darker in tone, and she was not tall. She gave a reserved smile and was wearing a faded jacket. Hello, how much for a ticket to visit the haunted house? The woman's voice was surprising shrill, but it was not to the point where it would hurt one's ears. We currently have 2 scenarios. 1 ticket is 20 renminbi, and you can choose which one you would like to experience, Gu answered with a business smile. Okay, then give me 2 tickets. The woman handed Gu the money. You wish to experience both scenarios? No, it's for the both of us. The woman smiled apologetically as she waved at a boy who looked to be 8 or 9. He ran toward her from underneath the shade. The boy was quite shy around people. He stopped beside the woman, but he did not reach out to grab her hand. He just stood there expressionlessly. I'm sorry, but our haunted house has an age requirement: no entry to those under 14. Gu took a look at this boy and had a feeling he was different from normal boys, but he could not pinpoint why he felt that way. Can you please make an exception for us? This boy loves visiting haunted houses. There aren't that many visitors now, so even if we go in, people won't notice. I promise we won't cause any trouble. A child that small likes to visit haunted houses? Gu slid the black phone stealthily back into his pocket and shook his head. I'm sorry, but those are the rules. The afternoon sun was rather blinding. Even after the woman was rejected firmly by Gu, she and the boy refused to leave. It is his wish to visit your haunted house, and I promised that he could. Can you please show some kindness? The woman pulled out a 100 note from her purse. I promise you, it'll be fine. Chen-gu did not accept the obvious bribe but asked confusedly, why do you insist on entering the haunted house? The boy is at most 8 years old. The environment inside the haunted house is so complicated that I'm afraid it might scar him for life. The woman smiled helplessly but did not answer Chen Ji's question. Instead, she turned around to rub the boy's fluffy hair. Fan Yu, shall we go play something else? Before she could finish, the boy slapped her hand away. The boy did not like physical contact, even from his family member. No matter how the woman tried to persuade him, the boy stood unmoving at the front of the haunted house. Occasionally, he might raise his head, and Chen-gu could see fear, inferiority, and a trace of detachment in his eyes. Fan Yu. Chen Ji's attention had completely shifted to the boy. This was the first time he had come across such a curious child before. He squatted down to the boy's level. Can you please tell me why you want to visit the haunted house? It is very dark inside the building, and there are scary things. The boy averted his eyes, but Chen-gu noticed his gaze kept wandering toward Chen Ji's shadow. He still had not said a word. The woman was probably afraid that Chen-gu might get offended, so she instantly jumped out to say, Xiao Yu is different from most children, he doesn't like to talk, so I hope you don't mind. Of course. Chen-gu realized these two were not going to move unless tossed out by the guards. He wasn't so cruel as to do that to a woman and a child, so he relented. How about this? I will let you enter the building for free, but you are only allowed to visit the outer perimeter, and I will be tagging along. Thank you. Sign the disclaimer agreements first, both adult and child. Please do not touch any of the props or run amok while you're inside. Stay close behind me. Chen-gu gave the 2 documents to the woman and the boy. Normally, he only needed the signature from the guardian, but to get as much information as he could from the boy, Chen-gu asked for the boy's signature as well. After signing the agreement, Chen-gu led them into the Minghun scenario. Chen-gu explained the story background to them. The trio stood at the entrance, which was decorated with white lantern. The woman was a bit nervous, observable from the way she gripped her purse. The boy had his head lowered, but it was unknown whether from fear or something else. The dead trees swayed in the wind, and the paper money that littered the floor scrunched under their footsteps. Chen-gu pushed open the entrance to the Sihiyuan and explained, that is what the interior looks like. Remember not to go in. The park has strict rules that prevent children under the age of 14 from experiencing the haunted house. As he finished, the little boy, who had been extremely quiet, suddenly rushed into the Sihiyuan before the 2 adults could even stop him. Fan Yu. The woman ran after him alongside Chen-gu. The boy stopped at the old well inside the courtyard. He had half of his upper body leaning down the well as if he was looking for something. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. The woman apologized profusely to Chen-gu as she tried to yank the boy out from the well. However, the shy boy seemed to have changed into another person. He not only tried his best to swat the woman's hands away, but in his desperation, his nails clawed her arms until they were bloodied. It appeared like he had gone berserk. The boy sure has some huge mood swings. The well in the Sihiyuan was just a prop, it was not even that deep, so Chen-gu was not worried for the child's safety. He was, however, curious about why the boy was so interested in the well. After 3 more minutes at the well, the boy released his grasp unwillingly, probably because he did not find what he was looking for. The boy was definitely different from most young boys. He was more excitable at places that were dark and sinister. Since you're already inside, then I suppose a little tour won't hurt. Chen Ji's attention was fully focused on the boy. Even among his peers, the boy was of a smaller stature. He had delicate features and large eyes that looked like pure ebony. The Minghun scenario is modeled after the traditional Sihiyuan, and the east and west houses are normally meant for the newer generations. He pushed open the door to the east house, and a female ghost in bridal outfit floated out from behind the door without warning. The woman screamed from shock and staggered back hurriedly. "Don't worry, it's just an actor." Chen-gu stopped the bride and whispered, "Su-wan, go take a break for now." "Boss, couldn't you at least pretend that you're scared?" Such a buzzkill. Su-wan picked up the dress and stepped over the wooden threshold. The boy who was behind Chen-gu rushed forward to stand before Su-wan and tilted his head up to look closely at Su-wan. "The kid seems to like me." Su-wan smiled at Chen-gu. It was not until Su-wan left the scenario that the boy pulled his gaze back. "I suppose that's enough touring for one day. The rest of the place has similar decor, so shall we leave now?" Chen-gu and the woman moved toward the exit, but the boy stopped in the courtyard. He looked left and right as if looking for something. "Fan Yu, it's time to go." The boy ignored the woman. He moved back to the old well and continued his search. "Isn't the boy afraid?" Chen-gu did not rush them but started chatting with the woman. "Are you his mother?" "No, I'm his aunt. I'm sorry for creating so much trouble." Xiao Yu is a bit different from boys his age. Ever since the accident with his parents several years ago, he has been like this. "We've been to many doctors, but it was to no avail." Psychological problems. "If you don't mind me asking, what happened to his parents?" Chen-gu asked cautiously. Xiao Yu's parents were both teachers at Muyang High School. They disappeared one day and have not been found since. At the time, Xiao Yu was only 5. I didn't know how to explain it to him, so I could only lie to him and say that his parents left for some place far away called heaven. Muyang High School. Chen-gu tensed after hearing these 4 words. "You've heard of it?" "There are plenty of rumors about that school. I advised Xiao Yu's parents from the beginning to seek employment elsewhere, but they refused to listen to me." The woman's eyes started to redden from the memory. She stopped talking to Chen-gu and walked toward the boy. "Xiao Yu, it's time to go home." The boy stayed stubbornly beside the well. This made Chen-gu even more curious. He squatted down beside the boy and asked, "Why do you keep looking inside the well? Is there some kind of monster living down there?" Fan Yu shook his head. The boy seemed to have let his guard down, standing at the corner that was shaded from the sun. "Then can you tell me why you don't want to leave the well?" The boy glanced at a spot behind Chen-gu before answering, "I'm looking for something." "What are you looking for?" Chen-gu was curious. The boy looked down the dark well for a long time before answering, "Heaven." "Looking for heaven inside the well?" Chen-gu looked at the boy and was suddenly reminded of something. His emotions were running wild. He turned around to take a deep breath to calm himself down. Thankfully, the woman did not notice his weird reaction. However, as he turned back around, he lowered his head and saw the boy has been staring at her, the glow in his eyes similar to earlier when he saw Su-wan in mortician's makeup. "Fan Yu, it's time to go home," the woman repeated. Finally, the boy moved away from the well. Even though he still had his head lowered, his mood seemed to have improved. However, after they exited the haunted house and the sunlight fell on the party, the boy returned to how he had been before, silent with an unbridled fear circulating in his eyes. It was hard to tell whether he was afraid of light or living humans. The woman thanked Chen-gu before leading the boy away. After the pair left New Century Park, Chen-gu sighed in relief. The black phone in his pocket vibrated. He sat on the steps as he thought back on what had happened earlier. Looking for heaven inside the well, perhaps for the boy, this was not meant in a metaphorical manner. After conversing with the woman, Chen-gu knew she had lied to the boy by saying that his parents had gone to somewhere called heaven so that he would not be too sad. She had probably hoped that the boy would come to the realization as he grew up, but things did not go as planned. The boy's psychological health was stunted. He could no longer be considered a normal young boy. However, the thing that surprised Chin-gu the most was the boy's answer when he asked what he was doing beside the well. His parents had gone to heaven and the boy kept on searching for heaven inside the well. Did this not prove indirectly that the boy had seen his parents shoved into the well with his own eyes? Their bodies are inside the well. Chin-gu lit a cigarette unknowingly. He did not hurry to call the police but continued his line of speculation. The boy's parents were both teachers at Muyang High School, and one of the side quests activated on the black phone is related to both Muyang High School and well. If this is not a coincidence, then the disappearance of the boy's parents should be related to Muyang High School. Chin-gu took out the black phone, and there was an unread message. He opened it. Different choices lead to different result. The first special visitor has left. You made the correct choice during the visitation period. Congratulations for obtaining the reward. Unlocked hidden trial mission Muyang High School. This mission is part of the 4-star scenario, School of the Afterlife side mission. Completing it will unlock a 2-star scenario, Muyang High School, and lower the trial mission difficulty for School of the Afterlife. Muyang High School Trial Mission, Scream Factor 2 stars. This scenario has 4 side missions. Survive after experiencing all of them, and the scenario will be unlocked. Mission Venue, Muyang High School. Mission Request, arrive at the mission venue before 11 p.m. tonight and survive until dawn. Mission Hint, everyone has a deep well inside their heart where shameful and unknowable secrets stay buried. Do you wish to accept the mission? Warning, trial mission is only active for 24 hours. If you do not accept it within 24 hours, you will forfeit the mission, and the scenario will forever be locked. The message on the black phone flustered Chin-gu. He did not expect the reward for accepting a special visitor would be the unlocking of a 2-star scenario's trial mission. He had already experienced the terror of a trial mission at Ping-an Apartments. It was much more dangerous than a nightmare mission, and Ping-an Apartments was merely a 1-star trial mission. Chin-gu memorized all the information on the screen as he looked through the black phone again and again. The previous mission required me to find the murderer while this mission only requires me to stay alive until dawn. It looks simpler in comparison, but the black phone must have its reasons to label this a 2-star mission. Its level of danger has to be higher than Murder by Midnight's trial mission. To survive, it sounded like a simple demand, but it greatly unsettled Chin-gu. The offer of the trial mission would be open only for 24 hours, and this was a great point of contention for Chin-gu. He did not know if surrendering this mission would affect the development of the 4-star scenario, School of the Afterlife. Even though based on his current situation, unlocking a 4-star scenario was practically impossible, he would still feel pain if he had to surrender it. Forfeiting this mission might mean forfeiting School of the Afterlife. 2 losses at once is indeed too big a loss. Chin-gu measured the pros and cons in his heart. Not accepting it means losing 2 scenarios, but if I manage to complete the mission, it means unlocking a 2-star scenario, and it will also complete the side missions for School of the Afterlife. The haunted house requires constant updates to retain the repeat visitors. This 2-star scenario comes at the right time, so I should give it a try. New Century Park was facing closure, and he needed to create results within 3 months, something that was impossible with the current haunted house. After some thought, Chin-gu decided to accept the mission. After the message disappeared, Chin-gu decided not to waste any more time. He called Su-won to inform her to look after the haunted house for the rest of the day because he had to go somewhere else. The boy was the key that activated the trial mission for Muyang High School, and Chin-gu believed he would be able to get more information from him. Chin-gu ran out the park entrance and saw the boy and the woman get on a bus. Route 14. Chin-gu hailed a cab and told the driver, "Go to the next stop for Route 14. The taxi reached the station arrived earlier than the bus, which arrived 1 minute later. The bus was crowded, and the woman was holding the boy in her arms as they were squeezed to the back of the bus. They did not discover Chin-gu. Following them home might nab me some surprise discoveries. Gu did not hurry to expose himself but stood at the front of the bus. The bus continued to pass 7 stations, and many passengers descended as the surroundings outside the bus became more and more deserted. When they almost reached the final station, the woman and the boy finally got off. They did not walk down the street but turned down a small, secluded path. They live at such a secluded place. Then again, the woman did mention finding many doctors for the boy that would burn a hole in the family finances. Gu trailed behind them. A short distance later, the woman and the boy suddenly increased in pace. Have I been discovered? Or are they hiding from something else? The dilapidated paths crisscrossed like a maze. Afraid of being left behind, Gu also picked up the pace. After many turns, a squat 2-story terrace block appeared before his eyes, and it was into this place that the woman and the boy disappeared. The drains surrounding the building were fetid with a horrible stench, and a large poster stating that the original tenants had moved was pasted on the first floor. Everywhere Gu turned, there was rubbish piling up either at the corner or directly on the floor. Gu walked toward the building, and many questions floated up his mind. The pair lived in such a horrible environment, so this meant that their living conditions were too good. However, at the park, the woman readily pulled out 100 renminbi just for the boy to visit the haunted house. This went to show how much she cared for the boy. Yet, the boy was cruelly indifferent to her. He had said only 2 phrases while he was inside the haunted house, and they were both directed at Gu. The boy seemed to dislike the woman vehemently. Is it because of his mental issues, or is something more sinister at work? After walking up the stairs, Gu realized there was only one tenant, residing on the 2nd floor. The corridor was swept clean, and there was laundry hanging on poles. Is anyone in? The door was open, but Gu still knocked on the door out of courtesy. Coming. Footsteps could be heard coming from inside the room. When she saw Gu, she was visibly stunned. Why are you here? Did we cause some damage when we visited the haunted house? The woman asked cautiously. No, it's not that. I'm just interested in the little boy's situation, and I have something to ask him. Gu realized the woman did not show any sign of wanting him inside the house, so he continued. I have some friends at Zhejiang Medical University, and I thought, maybe they can help. Thank you, but it's all right. The woman rejected him without thought. Then again, Gu also felt like he was being a little too forward. I am really not a bad person. You can look on your phone for today's Zhejiang morning news. Since the woman did not move, Gu took out his own phone to look for an article on him helping to solve the Ping An apartment case. Look, I've once helped the police solve a buried case and was awarded a Medal of Honor. Gu passed the phone to the woman, and she took a glance at it. Supernatural live streamer trapped and was finally saved by the police. The intrepidness of a haunted house operator almost caused his death. Ignore the headlines. There should be my picture inside the article. Gu explained for a long time before the woman put her suspicion aside. She returned his phone to him and said, "Come in for a seat then, just leave the door open." Okay. The woman led Gu to the living room, which was more like a 30 square feet space that had a dining table and beds pushed to the corners. Forgive the mess, I wasn't expecting any visitors. Would you like to have something to drink? The woman was embarrassed. In that moment, Gu could see the boy's shadow on her. That won't be necessary. I just want to ask some questions about the boy's parents. Gu took out his phone to record anything he deemed important. It has been so long already, why are you asking that now? Regardless, the woman sat down across from Gu and told him everything that had happened at Muyang High School 3 years ago. 3 years ago, Muyang High School had still been a normal school. That summer day, it had poured down with rain. When the boy's parents returned home, the boy had been nowhere to be found. They had gone out to search for him, but in the end, it was the boy who had returned and not them. This sounds like the reason for the parents' disappearance is also because of the boy Chin-gu recorded the key points that was given by the woman on his phone. He tried his best to recreate the event. Fan Yu's parents had realized that their child was missing after they came home after work. When they went out to look for him in the pouring rain, the last place they had been seen was unknown, but their bodies were most likely trapped under the water well at Muyang High School, and the boy was probably the sole witness of the whole event. It was also probably because he had witnessed the whole process that Fan Yu had become like this. Chen-gu looked at the surface of the table and frowned. He pulled out the black phone to look for the details of the side missions for School of Afterlife. The description for side mission 6, Deep Well, was, one brother and one sister went to school, but how come no one returned? The black phone would not make a mistake, so what did the pair of siblings have to do with Fan Yu's parents? According to the hint on the black phone, it was the siblings who fell into the well and not the boy's parents. Why was that? Chen-gu put the black phone away and looked at the woman with tears in her eyes. He asked with uncertainty, is Fan Yu an only child? Does he have brothers or sisters? The moment the question left his lips, the woman's expression changed. Her nails scratched deep into her skin, and her tears fell freely. If the accident did not happen to my two children, then Xiao Yu would have had a brother and a sister to play with. Your children. Before Chen-gu entered the room, he had noticed that the clothes hanging on the rods outside were mostly women's and children's, so he had assumed the woman was not married. They died when they were still very young, mere toddlers. The woman was on the verge of a breakdown. She blurted a quick sorry before escaping into the kitchen to collect herself. Then, Fan Yu does have a brother and sister, but according to the woman's description, they passed away a long time ago. Why would the black phone say the pair of siblings did not return home after school? Why would toddlers attend school? Is the black phone mistaken, or is the woman lying? Or was Fan Yu hallucinating? The woman stayed inside the kitchen for a long time. Chen-gu stood up and headed toward the only other room in the house. Fan Yu should be inside, he was the focal point of this whole mystery. Chen-gu pushed open the door, and the bedroom he stepped into was very clean. Fan Yu was standing before the table, seemingly writing something. Chen-gu walked up to the boy and looked over his shoulder. He realized the boy was drawing, and he had a preference for black and red colors. Xiao Yu, what are you drawing? Afraid that he might spook the boy, Chen-gu spoke in a soft voice. The boy turned to look at Chen-gu but did not answer. He turned back to focus on his drawing. As he continued to add colors, the picture on the paper started to materialize. In a pure black house stood several red miniature humans. After finishing the drawing, the boy crumpled the paper up and threw it onto the floor before starting a new drawing. Chen-gu stood and watched for a long time. He realized the central theme of Fan Yu's drawings comprised of only these two things: a black house and small, red humans. What is he trying to convey? Chen-gu picked up the finished drawing from the floor and flattened it out. After studying it for some time, he silently slid it inside his pocket. Red has the longest wavelength of the visible light spectrum. It is the direct contrast to black, so pairing them together creates a unique optical effect. The black house was dark as night while the red humans were fresh as blood. The picture created a great pressure on those who viewed it. The boy's favorite pastime is drawing. He doesn't like to go out and often secludes himself in his room. Unbeknownst to Chen-gu, the woman had entered the room. She held 2 glasses of water in her hands. Now, I no longer wish for anything but for him to grow up happily like a normal boy. The woman passed a glass of water to Chen-gu while placing the other beside the boy. Let's go outside, he is afraid of contact with strangers. Okay. Chen-gu returned to the living room, holding the glass of water. The woman sat down across from him. Do you have any other questions? The woman seemed to have put her guard up again. The poor child, I believe that he was traumatized when he was young, so to cure his condition, we have to find out the reason why and then work from there. Chen-gu vocalized his inner thoughts. You are his only family, and it is obvious that you care about him. Do you mind if I ask you a few more questions? The woman nodded. She had a thin sheen of sweat on her forehead, probably due to the heat. Earlier, you mentioned that Fan Yu's parents went missing after going out in search of him, so where was Fan Yu ultimately found? At Muyang High School. He was hiding in my brother's office. Muyang High School again. Weird things seem to keep on happening at that place. You couldn't be more right, the woman sighed. Muyang High School is the worst school in Zhejiang. To be honest, I don't even understand the purpose of its existence. Before it was shut down, the police had to visit it every other day on account of the constant fighting. That's serious? Chen-gu listened closely. After all, getting the information from the woman was much more convenient than researching online. That's not all. The woman stood up and continued in a serious tone. The school is famously haunted. According to the nearby elders, the place was originally a crematorium. It was knocked down due to city planning, but just think about it, how peaceful could the school be, being built on top of a site like that? I advised my brother not to seek employment there, but he just refused to listen to me. Then why did your brother insist on going to teach at Muyang High School? The salary was high, and he had a record, so it was difficult for him to find a job. Who would have thought that would be his last job? A record? Did he make some enemies? Could his disappearance be related to that? Chen-gu latched onto the details in the woman's conversation. No, it's nothing like that. My brother liked to drink, but he was a horrible drinker. That was why he was fired from his original school, and a bad history was left on his record. There were only so many schools in Zhejiang, and that made it difficult for him to get a new job. Then, his disappearance doesn't sound like it was caused by revenge. It's definitely not. The woman's confidence made Chen-gu narrow his eyes. How can you be so sure? The woman hesitated before she pulled out a picture from the drawer to place it on the table. Ever since the initial opening of the school, there was a classroom that had always stayed locked, and entry was forbidden for all staff and students. Other than the headmaster, nobody knew why. After the old headmaster passed away, this became a mystery. There are still many legends surrounding that classroom. People said it was a reserved classroom for the spirits who had perished in the crematorium, or some tragedy had befallen the workers before the school was completed. In any case, it is a very dark place. What does that have to do with your brother's disappearance? Chen-gu was confused. Take a look at this, and you will understand why. Chen-gu accepted the photo from the woman, and it was a very curious group photo. A drunken man sat in the middle, and around him stood several rows of students. It did sound like a normal graduation photo, but the problem lay in the fact that all the students were turned away from the camera. And should one look closer, every student was standing in a curious manner. They were all on their tiptoes. Where did you find this picture, and have you showed it to the police? Chen-gu placed the photo back on the table and rubbed the sweat that covered his palms. The night before his disappearance, my brother was at the bar watching the ball game with his friends. To ensure he would be able to attend work the next morning, he decided to sleep in the nurse's office. When he passed one of the classrooms, he saw many people standing inside. Praising the class for their hard-working attitude, he stopped for a moment in front of the classroom's door. The people inside the class seemed to be in the middle of taking a class photo. When they saw him, they invited him in to take the central seat. After taking the picture, the students left, and he himself was unclear who ultimately gave him this picture. The woman's voice was flat, but the story made Chen-ji's skin crawl. When my brother saw the picture, it gave him such a shock that he woke up from the alcohol instantly. It was then that he realized he was sitting inside the sealed classroom. The woman pushed the picture toward Chen-gu. He only revealed this to me and sister-in-law. We all thought it would eventually blow away, but the next day, that unfortunate incident happened. Xiao Yu suddenly disappeared, and the both of them went searching for him, but it was them who ended up missing. Therefore, I believe their disappearance doesn't have anything to do with revenge but was related to that sealed classroom. What did the police say? Chen-gu pushed the photo back. They did bring the photo back to Muyang High School to conduct an investigation. Even though the students in the picture were wearing Muyang High School's uniform, they could not be found at the school. They opened up the sealed classroom and took a close look. All they found were my brother's footprints, which confirmed that my brother was indeed once inside that room. Okay, I understand. Chen-gu asked the woman a few more questions, most of which she had no answer for, and for some she only provided a vague answer. After knowing he would not get any new information from the woman, Chen-gu stood up to leave. Leaving so soon? It's so hot outside, why don't you take a sip of the drink before you leave? Thank you, but I'm not thirsty. Chen-gu thanked the woman for her kindness before leaving the second floor. After the conversation with the woman, Chen-gu had a better understanding of Muyang High School. There are 4 side missions at Muyang High School, and 2 of them are related to the little boy's family. He took out Fan Yu's drawing from his pocket to take another few looks. The contrast of black and red seemed to be telling him something. Black house and red men. Could they be related to Muyang High School? Could this drawing refer to a building at Muyang High School? A child's thinking is more direct and less metaphorical. Could this drawing be an actual representation of the crime scene that he witnessed? The house is black, meaning the time of the crime was at night, and the people inside the house are red. They probably represent his parents, the victims. This is the most direct interpretation. Chen-gu tried looking at this painting from multiple angles. The boy had a hasty artistic style, all the human shapes looked the same and had no defining features. Chen-gu could not even tell their gender. Wait, the red humans probably aren't referring to his parents, there are way too many of them in the drawing. Chen-gu tried counting the number of red people, but every time he ended up with a different number. The drawing is too messy. What is the boy actually trying to communicate with it? In the room, Fan Yu kept on repeating the same drawing. They were all about a black house and many red people. However, every time he was done, he would crumble up the drawings and toss them away as if he was dissatisfied with them. Regardless, this painting is a crucial clue. Chen-gu came up with nothing even after studying the painting for a long time. He pocketed the drawing and glanced at the building behind him. The door, which he had left ajar, was now shut. Both the aunt and the child are problematic in their own way. The question is whose problem is bigger. Chen-gu got on the bus after escaping the maze-like paths. He was worried about his upcoming mission. If the woman was not lying to him, the test he was about to face that night would be incredibly difficult. For the sake of safety, Chen-gu took out his phone to search for more information on Muyang High School online. He came up with quite a large amount of information, and most of it came from various school forums. Based on the timeline, the posters probably were once students at Muyang High School, and after the school closed down, they were forced to change school and took the legends of Muyang High School along with them. After a cursory glance, a few of them did capture Chen Ji's attention. About 1 year ago, 5 students snuck into Muyang High School on a dare. They used their phones to record their experience, but instead of videoing the event, they updated a thread every few minutes. The original thread had long since been removed, and Chen-gu was reading a shared post. According to rumors, they had entered the sealed classroom and started playing the game of Pen Spirit. The 5 had sat around a table to summon the Pen Spirit, but as the game went on, there had ultimately been 7 people standing in the classroom. No one knew where the additional 2 had come from, and the 5 ran out of the school, crying and yelling all the way. Luckily, all 5 of them had survived the ordeal, but 2 of them seemed to have been traumatized from the incident. One of them had turned illogically violent while the other had acquired an irrational fear of daylight. Eventually, the 2 had moved out of Zhejiang. Chen-gu looked at some of the comments under the post. A poster pointed out that during the game, 2 additional persons appeared, and in the end, there were 2 students who were traumatized. The poster suspected that the two who escaped were already someone else, and the original two were still trapped inside that classroom. This speculation received many likes, but there were other opposing views as well. Some said all five had been possessed, but the two had stronger constitutions, and that was why they had acted weirdly. There was a pinned message from a teacher that banned further discussion on Muyang High School. Chen-gu scrolled through the thread and realized there was one that was hidden. Chen-gu opened it, and he was baffled by the content. The poster stated that his father's company had planned to purchase the land on which Muyang High School was located for a low price. Initially, everything was fine, but when the contract was almost ready, his father would have the same dream every night. Many students wearing Muyang High School's uniform would come to their house for classes. The weird thing was, when they woke up, there was evidence of forced entry into their house. His father was so scared that he fell ill before finally resigning. That was the end of the story. After reading all the posts, Chen-gu could not help but compare Muyang High School and Western Zhejiang's private academy, since they were both schools, and he came to a weird discovery. There were many supernatural rumors about Muyang High School online, but none of the stories mentioned death or injury. In comparison, while there was not much information on Western Zhejiang's private academy online, the record at the police station showed that there was more than one death that had happened at the school. If I really think about it, Western Zhejiang's private academy does sound scarier. That was the only way Chen-gu could have made himself feel better. Sitting on the bus and looking out the window, Chen Ji's phone suddenly rang. He looked down and saw it was from He-san. The kid sensed the possible unlocking of a new scenario, so he called to book in advance. Chen-gu answered the call and placed his phone beside his ear. Hello. Boss, quickly get on the video sharing app, someone is coming for your bread and butter. Huh? There's someone who is opening a new haunted house. Chen-gu clicked open the app, and before he was allowed entry into the homepage, an ad appeared on his phone. Host, Qin Guang leads you to explore an actual haunted house. Chen-gu clicked on the screen and more details popped up. Qin Guang was a famous live stream host on the platform. He had more than 600,000 followers, and most of his short videos had a humorous theme. On his personal bio, it stated that he belonged to XX Studio, and that studio was the same one who had tried to cozy up to Chen-gu earlier when he was at Ping In Apartments. The ad explained that Qin Guang's latest adventure was to branch into a new live streaming territory, to host a mystery live stream inside an actual haunted house. Chen-gu did not think too much of it at first, but when he saw Qin Guang's first mystery location, he was speechless. Qin Guang's team was going to live stream at Western Zhejiang's Ping In Apartments. Boss, have you seen it? That man realized that you had more than 10,000 views on your first live stream, so he's trying to copy your formula. He-san grumbled indignantly. There's no need to worry, certain things cannot be copied. Chen-gu had thought He-san was going to bring him some big news, so he was rather disappointed. He was not that worried about Qin Guang, although he also knew Qin Guang would not see him as competition either. On the other end of the phone, He-san said urgently, he has so many followers. After he consolidates himself as a supernatural host, I'm afraid they'll turn around and claim that it was you who copied them. It'll be fine. By the way, are you familiar with child psychology? I have a few questions for you. Boss, what time is it? You still have the luxury to ask questions like that. Furthermore, I'm a forensic doctor. For questions of psychology, you should refer to psychologist or psychiatrist. There's a boy who came to visit my haunted house today. He looked about 8 or 9, doesn't like to speak, and the darker the place, the more excited he gets. What kind of symptom are these? Chen-gu voiced the problem directly. He only had 2 people he could ask, one was He-san, and the other was He-fong. Forensic students focus on practical medicine, biology, and some chemistry. Psychology focuses on mental phenomena, neuroscience, and psychiatry. They are completely different fields. Even if you ask me, I won't be able to provide you with an answer. He-san sighed helplessly. Boss, are you really not planning to do anything about this? I notice you have not updated for a few days already, and your previous live stream was days ago. If you allow this to continue, your popularity will start to fall. Look at your profile page, there are already comments that say you're running out of ideas, and they even started to mock your haunted house. Mock my haunted house? There's such a thing. This did make Chin-gu worry. He clicked into his personal page and realized there were indeed plenty of negative comments. Boss, there are currently too many short videos, and homogenization is a serious problem. Once you stop updating, the viewers will quickly move on to other uploaders. You're right, but things aren't as serious as you think, Chin-gu replied. His focus was still on Fan Yu and his aunt. He had always treated the live stream and videos as additional support, the most important thing was still the missions on the black phone. If you say so. I just wanted to remind you. There was a saddened trace to He-san's voice. That Qin Guang is an established host, and on top of that, he has great support from his studio. The platform will definitely provide him with plenty of promotion, but I still believe your live stream will be better than his. His content is an imitation of mine, Chin-gu replied with a smile. The biggest difference between his content and other hosts was that his was completely authentic and could not be copied. Yes, I am widely lagging behind in terms of resources, channels, and fans, but if we're talking about the understanding and handling of the fear factor, he is still a rookie. You're right. After all, you're a professional. He-san paused before adding, Boss, I suddenly remembered something. What is it? Do you still remember the senior of mine that you scared until she cried? Your description fits so many people you might as well give me the name directly. Gao Ru Shui. Her father is a psychologist and a tenured lecturer in criminal psychology. I'll ask if she can help you tonight. Okay, if you succeed, I'll treat you to a meal and gift you a free tour of the haunted house's new scenario. Chin-gu appreciated the aid of this honest young man and easily promised a reward. Thanks, but no thanks. Last time I visited your haunted house, it caused me to have nightmares for a few consecutive nights, He-san complained. This one time, I fell asleep in class, and I didn't even know the lecturer had wandered to my side. In my dream, I was chased by a crazed doctor holding a hammer. When I ran to the top of the stairs, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I was so shocked that my body just reacted with an elbow jab, and when I opened my eyes, the lecturer's glasses were broken already. Chin-gu tried to hold in his laughter, but he failed. All right then. I won't force you to visit the haunted house in the future. After chatting for a bit more, Chin-gu finally hung up. He looked out the window, and the sun was slowly covered up by rain clouds. When he returned to New Century Park, from afar, Chin-gu saw a group of people crowding the entrance of the haunted house. Su Wan was busy negotiating with them. Xiao Wan, what's the matter? You're finally back. These visitors are all here to visit the haunted house, but since I could not find you, I could only ask for their patience. Su Wan was already out of her makeup, and her forehead was filled with sweat from the anxiety. Well done. Stay outside to sell them the tickets, leave the rest to me. Chin-gu pushed open the gate, put on the Dr. Skullcracker outfit, and entered the murder by midnight scenario. At around 4 p.m., it started to drizzle, and the clouds in the sky thickened. Many of the park attractions had to stop for fear of accidents, and most visitors who still had not had their fill went to the indoor attractions. It was thus that Chin-ji's haunted house became an unlikely favorite. The crowd outside the place was huge until 5 p.m., when it started to disperse. Chin-gu, who had run around the building for the whole afternoon, was exhausted. He removed his outfit and walked out of the haunted house. The sky was dark, and the wind was howling. It was also pouring several years ago when Fan Yu's parents disappeared. Chin-gu looked at the sky with a complicated emotion. He told Su-won to go home before returning to the maintenance room to prepare his backpack. He shoved a lighter, flashlight, multi-purpose mallet, and doll into it and left the haunted house in a raincoat. Due to the unexpected crowd, when Chun-gu left the park, it was already 6 p.m. He stopped a cab at the entrance, but when he told the driver his destination was Muyang High School, the driver refused to take him. He had no choice but to wait for another. The other driver told Chun-gu that the roads leading to Muyang High School were already overgrown with shrubs and were unpassable by car, so he could only drop Chun-gu near Muyang High School. There was a time limit on the mission. Arriving early meant more time to scout and consequently lower the risk. Chun-gu did not want to waste time. After negotiating the price with the driver, he departed. On the way there, he asked the driver for more information on Muyang High School, but the driver merely looked ahead with a serious expression and focused fully on his driving. In that moment, Chun-gu found himself missing the talkative uncle who had driven him to Western Zhejiang's private academy. At around 7 p.m., they finally reached the destination. The road was horrible, and the place was even more backwards than the countryside. The car cannot continue any further, so this is where I'll have to stop. The driver pointed outside the window. There should be people living nearby, so go to them if you're lost. Send me the fare through WeChat, I don't accept cash. No cash? Chun-gu was confused, but he did not ask further, everyone had their quirks. After paying, he got out from the taxi. The rain started to intensify, and the sky by then was completely dark. Chun-gu looked around him, and there were indeed several rows of houses a distance away, but they looked abandoned because they were completely dark. How am I supposed to find Muyang High School? Chun-gu turned to ask the driver, only to see the driver toss the seat mat he had sat on earlier out the window and turn around to leave without hesitation. He refused to take my cash and tossed out the mat I sat on earlier. What is the meaning of this? Is it because he thinks I'm dirty? The strange way the taxi driver acted unsettled Chun-gu. Taxi drivers were the party that were the most familiar with the city, thus, they knew the taboo places that populated the city. Has the driver misunderstood me? The mat was dropped in the mud and was soon drenched by the rain. While he was reading the supernatural stories on Muyang High School, Chun-gu did not think they were that scary. However, after the incident with the taxi driver, Chen-ji's bravery started to waver. The requirement of this mission is merely for me to survive. This means that even the Black Phone believes that surviving will be a huge challenge. In the blink of an eye, the taxi disappeared down the road. Chun-gu stood in his raincoat surrounded by a wide expanse of nothing but trees. It felt like he was abandoned in the wild. The rain continued to pour. Chun-gu pulled the raincoat tighter and pulled out his flashlight to wander down the muddy road. The rain clouds were low in the sky, blocking out the moonlight. Chun-gu moved toward the buildings that he had seen earlier, and it was not until then that he realized how rundown they actually were. Rusted chains hung off the door, and the glass on the window had long since been broken. Looking through the cracks, Chun-gu saw that the interior was stuffed with rotten furniture and trash with unknown bugs crawling over the ground. There's not a single sign of a living person. Is this place that cursed? Before he came, he did obtain several precious nuggets of information from Fan Yu's aunt. Therefore, Chun-gu knew a thing or two about the surroundings of Muyang High School. Since there was no one for him to ask, he could only wander deeper into the unknown based on his memory. The road was muddy from the rain, and it was bordered on both sides by weirdly shaped trees, but they had all overgrown into the road due to a lack of trimming. Muyang High School's site was once a crematorium. As scary as that is, it meant that there had to be a road for vehicles. However, the road keeps getting smaller and smaller. It's practically impossible for any four-wheeled vehicle to traverse. Am I even on the right road? The intensity of the rain slowed Chen-ji's progress. It'll not bode well if I get lost. If Muyang High School is not at the end of this road, I'll need to turn back and abandon this quest. Chun-gu continued on the road at another 30 minutes. At the end of the road, he saw a sign that was knocked off the ground and a wooden fence. There's lichen growing on its side. It has been on the ground for years already. Chungu pulled the sign upright, but the characters were too faded for him to make any sense of it. He used his flashlight to scan the sign. Why does the lichen only grow on one side? Is it because of the sun, or has someone been here recently to move the sign and the fence? He stopped moving and looked at the time on his phone. It's almost 8 p.m., and the mission location is still nowhere to be found. The only good news is that I still have coverage. At least I can call for help in case of an emergency. The night was exceptionally dark because of the rain. Chunji's phone was the sole source of light for miles. Both sign and fence are here, but weirdly enough, they seem like they have recently been moved. This is curious. Chungu used the sign to part the shrubbery that blocked his way. He walked for another 10 meters before the scenery changed. A row of broken wooden railings stood in the middle of the forest, and within the railings were several squat buildings. This is Muyang High School. Compared to Western Zhejiang's private academy, this school looked far more dilapidated. Its size was less than one-third of Western Zhejiang's private academy. Chungu did not let his guard down simply because the place was smaller in size. The school being smaller might not necessarily be a good thing. Yes, the need for exploration had decreased, but so had the space for hiding. Chungu tossed the sign aside and jumped over the rail into Muyang High School. All the buildings of the school could be captured with one glance. The one closest to the entrance was the education block. It seemed to have been the victim of a huge fire. The surface was charred black, and the corners of the wall seemed cracked, as if it could fall at any given moment. To the left side of the education block was the dormitory. Probably due to the low number of students, the dormitory only had 2 stories and barely a handful of rooms. To the right was the office, and from the exterior, the building seemed to be the best preserved. Behind the education block was an uneven field. 2 basketball courts and several ping-pong tables stood to the side. Thus was the layout for Muyang High School. Other than its rich supernatural history, the school itself was lacking in flavor and personality. Chungu suspected that the real reason for closure was not something supernatural, but rather there were simply no new students who wished to study here. Weirdly enough, when Chungu arrived at his destination, he felt calmer. He was an expert at managing his emotions. There are 4 side missions at Muyang High School: the pen spirit, the 5th cubicle in the toilet, deep well, and the sealed classroom. If I want to unlock the full scenario, I mustn't miss out on any of them. In the previous mission, it was because Chungu had a more than 90% completion rate that he obtained the hidden reward Wang Chi's missing person notice. It was this item that had bridged the relationship between Chungu and Xiaoxiao's family. He understood the importance of having a high mission completion rate, but it was easier said than done. Any one of the side missions could rival the creepiness of a nightmare mission, and he was expected to complete all 4 in one night. It is still not yet midnight. There's still time before the active hour for the residents of the other world. I should scout out these 4 locations. If the difficulty is too high, I still have time to leave. Chungu put the doll in his chest, whipped out his trusty mallet, and headed toward the education block. The surface of the building was black with soot that remained even after so many years. The whole building is burnt. Could this be related to the original crematorium? Chungu moved lightly. He remembered the mission description provided by the black phone. There's a classroom at the end of the corridor that's always sealed. No one ever enters it, but every night, the classroom will come alive with activity. Bad luck befell Fan Yu's father after he entered that classroom, so that classroom might be the center of the paranormal activities at Muyang High School. The creepy photo appeared in Chen Ji's mind. There was a high chance he would have to spend the night with the roomful of students who refused to meet the camera. All the classrooms were locked, and Chungu could only peer in through the windows with his flashlight. The front few classrooms were normal abandoned classrooms. It was not until Chingu reached the very last classroom at the end of corridor that he spotted something weird. The classroom was curiously preserved from the fire. However, what attracted Chingu's attention the most were the books, paper, and pen that were placed on the table in the middle of the classroom, creating the illusion that someone had just attended a class there. Shall I go in to take a closer look? Chingu was anxious. Holding the mallet in his hand, he wished desperate to knock the door down to see what was written on the piece of paper. According to the school forum, 5 students once broke into Muyang High School to play a game of pen spirit in the last classroom on a dare. Could the pen and paper have been left behind by them? Chingu thought about it and realized that was impossible. According to the post's description, when the 2 extra people appeared in the room, the 5 students were so scared that they escaped as fast as they could. In their desperation to escape, they had to knock over some of the furniture, but all the tables and chairs in the room now were neatly arranged. Of course, that doesn't take away from the possibility that after they left, the furniture was rearranged or the speculation that all 5 were possessed. Chingu put his mallet down and decided to save the classroom for last. After leaving the education block, Chingu headed for the dormitory. The dilapidated squat building had less than a handful of rooms, and he walked around it for a long time before coming across a faded iron sign. The characters on it were smudged, but Chingu believed that it once read, "Second floor is female rooms. No entry to males. This school sure is shabby." After removing his raincoat, Chingu dabbed at the rain that had seeped into his collar and was about to carry on when his phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and answered it readily. "He-san. Boss, I've given my senior your phone number. She said that she would have her father contact you when he's home." "Thank you, is there anything else?" "Also, that Qin Guang has just started his live stream. Are you sure you're not going to take a look? He hired an actor to play the killer next door, and his opening and even his analysis were a complete copy of yours. I didn't even know from where I should start to complain." "Let him be then. But when I start my live stream in a bit, remember to come support me." "You're starting a live stream?" He-san's voice shot up several octaves. Chingu was gladdened that he had such a loyal viewer. "Since it has been quite long since my previous live stream, I have something exciting planned this time." There was silence on the other end of the phone. Chingu could hear shuffling footsteps several seconds later. He-san seemed to have put on his slippers to run around his bedroom to shake every one of his roommates awake. "It's time to get up to watch the live stream. Yet another bout with death tonight." While Chingu was thankful for He-san's free promotion, but his words did make him feel a bit weirded out. After hanging up, Chingu opened up the video sharing app. Qin Guang's supernatural livestream was heavily promoted on the front page. He clicked on it for a quick look. It was obvious that a full team was behind this production. There was a professional cameraman, and Qin Guang was only responsible for the analysis and looking for clues. Just the comparison of video quality alone could squish Chingu like a bug. He definitely could not fault his opponent for having better preparation. 680,000 views. If I had that many views to promote my haunted house, wouldn't the whole park be filled the next day? Chingu, don't get too far ahead of yourself for now. Focus on the current goal of surviving tonight first. He left Qin Guang's live stream and opened his own. He was stranded at the countryside, so his connection was weak. His live stream video was fuzzy, and there were constant black screens and lag. He could not even see the chat. "My video quality might not be as good as Qin Guang's, but my content is definitely better than his." Since he couldn't see the chat, Chingu could not communicate with his viewers. After a brief introduction of Muyang High School, he stopped following the live stream. Chingu searched through the first floor of the dormitory and came up with nothing, so he moved to the second floor. The female dormitory room looked similar to the male's. The rooms were filled with textbooks and trash. When the school was closed, most of the stuff inside it was not cleared out. Chingu looked through the rooms patiently with his flashlight. When he passed through the fourth bedroom on the second floor, he discovered that there were 4 chairs placed neatly in a row inside the room, and several pieces of white paper as well as a ballpoint pen were placed on one of the chairs. The paper and pen looked brand new, so they must have been placed inside the room after the school was closed. This was the second time that Chin-gu had come across the combination of paper and pen. The rusted lock was a mere decoration. Chin-gu merely rattled it several times before it fell away. As the door opened, the smell of mold hit him like a wave. Chin-gu covered his mouth and nose as he walked closer to the chair to look at the pieces of paper. There were 4 white papers in total. The first one read, "When will I die?" The second read, "How will I die?" The third read, "Who will be the next to die?" The fourth was completely empty. The pen spirit game. Chin-gu ransacked the rest of the room to try to come up with some extra info, but most of the stuff had decayed from time. Since his investigation turned up nothing, Chin-gu turned his focus back on the white paper in the middle of the room. No one could provide an actual explanation behind the pen spirit game, but the scientific community stresses that it was reasons like breathing, heartbeat, and blood flow that caused the human body to shiver. A simple human without special training would have their arm move after maintaining them in a constant, elevated position for a long time. This is a natural bodily reaction that has nothing to do with legends of the pen spirit. Chin-gu placed the phone on the bed and made sure himself and the 4 chairs were all within view. Since I need to complete all 4 side missions at Muyang High School, might as well start with this one. He turned to close the bedroom door. He stood and hesitated for 4 minutes before sitting down and picking up the ballpoint pen. Internally, he told himself not to worry. Chin-gu placed the doll in his chest pocket, and with his right hand holding the pen and left hand holding the mallet, he started the game of pen spirit. He tried to remember as many details from the thread that he had read earlier. He raised his arm slightly and straightened the pen so that the tip of the pen touched the white paper. He closed his eyes and started to chant. Pen spirit, you are my spirit from my previous life, and I am your spirit in this life. If you are with us, please draw a circle on the paper. After chanting, Chin-gu tried to make himself calm down. His arm was suspended over the paper, his body frozen. The rain outside the window continued to fall. The school that was swallowed by the night started to shift imperceptibly. The moldy smell in the room dispersed, and a cold draft of an unknown origin lifted the white paper on the chair slightly. Not long after that, Chin-ji's eyes flew open. He had just felt someone grip his hand. Chin-gu stared closely at his right hand while his left hand tightened over the mallet. He would strike the moment things went wrong. A weird smell suffused the cramped female bedroom. The bedsheet that was beyond the light of the flashlight fluttered lightly like something was crawling out from underneath it. Rain droplets fell on the window. A storm was brewing outside, but inside the dormitory room, it was eerily quiet. With his arm hanging over the white paper, Chin-gu tried to make himself relax. After chanting the spell to invoke the pen spirit, there was an obvious pressure on the back of his palm like someone had placed their hand over his. Chin-gu could even feel the chills coming from the other person's fingertips. Pen spirit, you are my spirit from my previous life, and I am your spirit in this life. If you are with us, please draw a circle on the paper. Chin-gu chanted again, and the feeling of iciness on the back of his hand intensified. However, to his befuddlement, the pen in his grasp remained upright. It did not draw a circle or even do anything. The pen spirit refuses to answer my call. The atmosphere in the room turned palpable with pressure, and the chill from the back of his hand had now spread to his arm. For some reason, I feel like a few more individuals have joined me in this room. Chin-gu focused, and his pupils started to dilate in the dark. Probably due to the yin-yang vision, he could see 3 blurry shadows standing around him with their hands extended to grab the pen in Chin-ji's palm. 3 of you. Chin-ji's heart skipped a beat, but with a blink, the image that he saw instantly disappeared. However, Chen-gu knew that it did not mean they had left. Chen-ji's palm felt like it had been stuck inside a cold water bath. He was certain that there were at least 3 other hands holding the pen in his grasp. 3 individuals answered my call. Is this the effect of my Spectre's Favored title? While Chen-gu was trying to figure out an answer, the pen that hovered over the paper suddenly moved. It was slight, but Chen-gu definitely felt it. Is it beginning? The flashlight he placed to his side seemed to have dimmed, and under Chen-ji's close scrutiny, the pen in his grasp started to move. The tip of the pen attached itself to the surface of the paper, and with the friction between the paper and the pen, soon a red circle was drawn. Chen-gu knew he did not move, but there was indeed a drawing on the paper. Chen-gu stared at the circle, and he was reminded of this side mission's name, the Pen Spirit Who Refused to Leave. There are 3 taboos to the Pen Spirit game. 1. You mustn't ask about your cause of death. 2. You mustn't ask about your life expectancy. 3. You have to unbind the spirit when you're done. Violating any one of these will lead to horrible consequences. The third was the most serious because if the spirit was not unbound, it would stay by the person who had invoked it forever until it turned malevolent and killed all the players. Hopefully, there is no accident, Chen-gu murmured before shifting his focus back onto the white paper. The red circle was drawn right in the middle of the paper. Sounds like it has heard my voice. It's time for me to ask some questions. Chen-gu was only there to complete the Black Phone's mission. He did not want to try anything stupid lest he angered the spirit. It is rare to have summoned the Pen Spirit. Chen-gu thought about it and voiced the question that he most wished to know the answer to. Pen Spirit, do you know where my parents are? When he did the bathtub nightmare mission, the people Chen-gu wanted to meet the most were his parents, but his wish had not been fulfilled. However, this did tell him that at least his parents were still alive. They were merely missing. Chen-gu did want to know the answer to this question. However, to his surprise, when he posed this question, the pen in his grasp started to quiver, and there was even a faded crack that appeared on the body of the pen. This was different to what he expected. Is my question that difficult? 2 minutes later, Chen-gu had an uncanny feeling that the room had turned brighter. The pen in his hand started to move again to draw another circle. What does that mean? Pass. Chen-gu looked at the 2 circles on the paper, and he could sense the pen spirit's awkwardness. It did not know the answer to his question either. This is weird, but it does sound like my parents' disappearance is more complicated than it appears. Chen-gu was silent for a long time. Other than this question, he really did not have anything that he was that curious about. So be it, I'll just ask a random question just to get this side mission over with. The chill on his arm had spread to his shoulder. As the game continued, Chen-gu could feel about half of his body starting to get numb, like it was slowly escaping his control. Then I shall switch to a different question. Pen Spirit, can you please tell me who my future wife will be? The pen quivered, and the flashlight flickered as if announcing the arrival of something. The atmosphere in the room started to get nervous again. The window rattled on its hinges, and droplets of rain seeped into the room. Lightning flashed across the sky, and in that split second, there were 4 shadows that were reflected on the wall. Chen-gu felt his hand weaken as the pen in it started to move. Blood-red letters appeared on the white paper, and soon, the first character was finished. Su. Is it Su-won? Despite it supposedly being a throwaway question, Chen-ji's interest was piqued. The pen in his hand continued moving, but as it was starting to begin the second character, it suddenly stopped moving. What's going on? Chen-gu was a spectator in this whole enterprise. He did not exert any force, but the pen in his grasp began to quiver violently, and more cracks started to form on its surface. Bang! Many forces seemed to be fighting within the darkened bedroom. The ballpoint pen finally crumbled under pressure and cracked. One of the forces seemed to have surrendered. Then Chen-gu saw something shocking. The pen in his grasp crossed out the Su that was already written and wrote down another name beside it. Zhangya. The name was so perfectly and clearly written on the white paper that Chingu did not even know how to respond. Pen Spirit, are you sure this is the name that you intended to write from the very beginning? There was no answer, and the chill on his arm also disappeared. Pen Spirit, are you still with us? If you can hear me, please draw a circle. The feeling of Yin energy had dissipated completely, and the room had returned to normal. It seemed like the Pen Spirit had left without saying goodbye. However, for the sake of security, Chingu chanted, Pen Spirit, you are my spirit from my previous life, and I am your spirit in this life. If you wish to go, then please go ahead. Chingu stood up from beside the chair since the game was already over. Once he relinquished his grasp, the ballpoint pen in his grasp split into several sections. The whole thing just looked sad. My game of Pen Spirit sure is different from others. Chingu picked up his phone and realized with a start that his live stream's popularity had surpassed 20,000 views. This was a brand new record for him. When did the views surpass 20,000? At the beginning of the live stream, I remember seeing only 10 people in the room. Chingu raised the phone up to the ceiling, but the signal was still weak. The chat was lagging badly. One moment, he could not even load a single comment, but suddenly, he would be overwhelmed by a ton. He could barely make sense of anything. 20,000 views but less than 5,000 followers, this ratio is a bit lacking. Chingu used his phone to snap pictures of the few pieces of paper that had been used in the Pen Spirit game. He then turned the camera to capture the broken ballpoint pen that sat in the middle of the chair. Dear viewers, can you see this? I have played the Pen Spirit game until the pen itself committed suicide. Aren't you going to follow me? Do you know how much I'm risking being here? An unknown host like myself, without equipment or a team. I'm here all alone, threading the line of danger. I know my equipment is not that great, and I can't even interact with you in chat, but I can lead you into the most authentic supernatural experience. This is definitely one of a kind and cannot be copied. After giving his speech, the number of followers started to rise. For Chingu, he was merely completing the Black Phone's mission, but it was a different concern from the viewer's perspective. Especially in comparison to Qin Guang's live stream. Even though Chingu was lacking in terms of equipment, his content was inimitable, whether from the aspect of danger or spectacle. The key to a successful live stream was none other than freshness and creativity. Qin Guang's team relied on a finished script, and they even had an actor to play the part. However, no matter how realistic the actor's acting was, it would appear forced. However, Chen Ji's content was very different, even Chingu himself did not know what would happen next. Thank you for your support. That was the Pen Spirit game, please do not try this at home. Alright, now we shall move on to the next location. Looking at the popularity that was still rising, Chingu was overjoyed. In any case, since he had to finish these missions dispensed by the Black Phone, why not make use of them fully and convert them into popularity? I wonder what is happening inside the chat room, but a rising popularity is a good thing. At least my risk of coming here tonight is not going to waste. The easy completion of the first side mission gave Chingu a boost of confidence. He put on his raincoat and left the dormitory. He had done everything he could there, so there was no point in staying. There are 3 side missions left, the sealed classroom, the deep well, and the 5th cubicle in the toilet. The 5th cubicle in the toilet appeared to be inside the education block. Chingu had been to the dormitory's toilets, and they only had 4 cubicles. If the office building's layout was similar to the dormitories, then only the education block's toilets fit the mission description. Chingu glanced at his phone. He had arrived at Muyang High School at 8 p.m. Technically, the Pen Spirit game should not have taken too long, but the time showed that it was now almost 9 p.m. There are 3 hours left until midnight. 1 hour for each mission should be fine. Chen Ji's plan was to finish all the side missions as soon as possible and find a corner to hide in until dawn arrived. When he stood before the education block again, Chen-gu had a weird feeling that the thing that sat before him was not an abandoned building but a giant coffin that housed plenty of dead bodies. The side mission did not specify the exact location of the toilet. There are 3 stories to this block, and this means that any one of the toilets on the 3 levels could be my mission location. Chen-gu turned on his flashlight and entered the building. Passing through empty classrooms at night caused Chen-ji's skin to crawl. He was afraid that once he turned, he would see something that shouldn't exist inside the classroom. He rushed toward the end of the corridor and entered the first floor's toilet. The place was spared from the fire and the interior remained the same as it was several years ago. The flooring was cracked and weeds could be seen peeking through the cracks. There were a brownish stain on the wall and the sole window in the room was creaking eerily. Focus on the mission, there's no time to waste. All of the toilets inside the education block had 6 cubicles. Years of abandonment meant that most of cubicle doors were broken and Chen-gu could look into the cubicles without even opening the door. With the mallet in his hand, Chen-gu walked past the 6 cubicles. The earlier 4 cubicles had nothing wrong about them but the 5th and 6th cubicles caught his attention. The doors to these 2 cubicles were shut and with a slight push, Chen-gu realized with a start that they were locked. Normally, the door is locked only because someone is occupying the cubicle, however, that could not be true here. The school has been abandoned for 3 years already. Even if something is occupying the cubicles, it cannot be human. In any case, I'd better take a closer look. Chen-gu smashed at the 6th door with his mallet, and the door fell open. Before Chen-gu could react, several dark shadows charged at him. What is that? He jumped back to avoid them. He shone his flashlight at his assailant, and Chen-gu was embarrassed to realize it was merely the cleaning equipment. After recovering from the fake scare, Chen-gu picked the mops and brooms off the floor and shoved them back into the cubicle. He found the same thing in the next cubicle. All 6 of the cubicles on the first floor were normal, which meant that his mission venue was on another floor. After exiting the toilet, Chen-gu looked over his shoulder with uncertainty. The cubicle doors creaked on their hinges like people waving at him. This would create quite a scary effect inside the haunted house. Chen-gu made a mental note to remember this for the future and headed up the stairs to the 2nd floor. It had the same layout as the first floor toilet, but the window was boarded up. Once Chen-gu stepped into the space, he felt weirdly pressured. This should be the place then. Probably because the window was boarded up, the toilet was better preserved than the first floor one, there was not much change compared to how it was several years ago. He walked to the first cubicle, and before even pushing the door open, he heard footsteps coming from the corridor outside. However, due to the interruption from the rain, he could not really tell for sure that I saw someone running in the corridor. He hid in a corner of the toilet and raised his mallet in a guarded posture in case someone decided to rush into the room. Nothing like that happened. As time moves toward midnight, the school is slowly starting to change, like it is coming alive. Looks like I will need to pick up my pace. Chen-gu stopped hesitating and pushed open the first 4 cubicles in one go. When he stood before the 5th cubicle, the footsteps in the corridor started again, and he heard it clearly this time. There were 2 sets of footsteps. The mission description for the 5th cubicle in the toilet stated that a red shadow would appear at midnight. Was that it? However, the mission was described in first person, stating that someone hid themselves in the 5th cubicle to capture the red shadow that appeared at midnight. However, what happened next was an unknown, leaving Chen-gu plenty of room to imagine. He switched off the flashlight and thought to himself, the mission states that a red shadow will appear in the toilet at midnight, but the footsteps clearly show that there were 2 people walking side by side. Could it be that the red shadow has found a new friend in the years that it was trapped in this abandoned school? The footsteps were slowly approaching the 2nd floor toilet. Following the mission requirement, Chen-gu should hide inside the 5th cubicle, but Chen-gu felt that was too dangerous. He would have effectively trapped himself. Perhaps I should act more proactively. Chen-gu hid behind the toilet door, and no matter who it was, he would start by whacking them on their head. Chen-go took a deep breath before holding it in and raising the mallet above his head. The footsteps became clearer and clearer. It sounded like two individuals running side by side. They were dangerously close to the second-floor bathroom. The wait was real torture for Chen-go. He had no idea what was outside and had even less of a clue what they were planning to do. All he could do was make himself as silent as possible. Several seconds later, the footsteps finally stopped before the toilet entrance. Here they come. Chen-ge's hand that gripped the mallet had started to sweat, and his heart was racing at an impossible rate. The storm continued to brew outside, and the rain seeped into the room, wetting the toilet floor. Where are they? Chen-go turned to look over his shoulder. There were no human faces staring down at him like he had expected. His patience was wearing thin. With one hand on the door knob, he prepared to lean out to take a look. However, before he could do that, a flash of lightning tore apart the sky, and utilizing the temporary brightness, Chen-go saw two shadows reflected on the toilet floor. They're standing at the entrance. His body froze, and since his flashlight had already been switched off, he could see nothing in the darkness of the toilet. The shadows were short, like two children. He did not dare to let his guard down. After waiting for several seconds, the footsteps resumed. However, unlike what he had expected, the owners of the footstep did not enter the toilet but went down the staircase next to it and down to the first floor. Leaving just like that? Chen-go slowly moved out from behind the door. He turned to look at the entrance, and there was nothing there. The thing that stood at the door earlier felt like two children. This is different from the red shadow described by the black phone. Is this because too much time has passed since then, or did my early arrival at the school mess up the schedule? Chen-go could not figure out the answer. Switching the flashlight back on, Chen-go wandered over to the fifth cubicle. Regardless, he had to inspect the cubicle to see whether it was the actual mission venue. The door opened to reveal an old yet completely normal space. Based on the situation thus far, the mission venue should be in the third-floor toilet. The two children from earlier have run down to the first floor, so this is the perfect chance. Chen-go turned to walk out the toilet. Before he reached the threshold, his phone rang. It was an unknown caller. Whose number is this? Chen-go did not have many friends, and the few he had would not normally contact him. After a brief hesitation, Chen-go retreated to the corner and exited the live stream to answer the phone. Hello. Are you Ru Shue's classmate? I hear you came across a strange boy whom you suspect is suffering from a psychological problem. The voice on the other end of the phone had a gravity to it. It exuded an air of confidence. I did, and you are? I am Ru Shue's father. He-san did mention giving Chen-ge's phone number to Gao Ru Shue earlier. Looks like this senior of his did things with efficiency. Do you mind telling me about the boy in greater detail? Psychological illness is not unlike a venom inside one's body. If one does not remove it as soon as possible, it might ruin that boy's future. Gao Ru Shue's father was familiar with the potential danger of psychological problems. From his perspective, a psychological illness could be more dangerous than many physical illnesses. There is this boy about 7 or 8. He's physically fine, but he appears to have withdrawn from the world, he refuses to interact with others and is afraid of sunlight. Are there any other symptoms? If possible, can you give me them in detail? I met this boy at the entrance of a haunted house park attraction. His aunt told me that the boy likes to spend time inside haunted houses. Normal emotions that one should experience inside a haunted house like fear and anxiety were missing from the boy. In fact, he appeared to be more comfortable in the darkness than under the sunlight. It gave me the impression that darkened corners give him a sense of security. Chen-go voiced the speculation that he had. If he had not met the child in person, he would not have believed that such a curious boy existed. A boy of 7 or 8 who likes to visit haunted houses. And doesn't feel afraid? Yes, the boy even showed interest in the actor who was in a dead person's makeup. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a few seconds. If it is just a lack of fear, it could be autism, which could be responsible for the damage to the amygdala of his brain. I'm sorry, but I don't think I understand. To put it simply, the amygdala is the central nervous system where memory is processed and stored. It is also responsible for the production of emotions like rage and fear. If one's amygdala is damaged, even if facing a lion or viper, one wouldn't be afraid, much less being scared inside a haunted house. Gao Rushue's father had a point, but Chengu still felt the description did not quite fit Fan Yu's conditions. Dr. Gao, it is by no means that the boy is not afraid of anything. For one, he is afraid of sunlight and hates walking under the sun. Also, he was not only unafraid of the haunted house, he liked the environment inside it. It felt like he was a completely different boy inside and outside of the haunted house. Chengu thought about it before adding, he was completely silent when he was outside the haunted house and refused to have interaction with others, but he was energized when inside the haunted house. When it was time to leave, his refusal to leave was vehement, and I saw him injure his aunt with my own eyes. Listening to your description, it might also be a sign of bipolar disorder, highly destructive and irrational when angered but highly individualistic and retreats into his own world when depressed. Teacher Gao shared his analysis with Chengu. But one point still eludes me. Patients with bipolar disorder might be triggered at any given moment, and there shouldn't be a clear trigger like being inside or outside a haunted house. My personal opinion is that since the boy's attitude change is related to haunted houses, then the source of his problem should be related to a haunted house as well. Did he suffer from any trauma inside a haunted house when he was young? Or did his parents work at a haunted house? After hearing the analysis from Gao Rushue's father, a speculation appeared in Chen Ji's mind. The boy's changes in personality happened inside his haunted house, and the biggest difference his haunted house had compared to others was that his haunted house was really haunted.